Relax now, my friend. Settle into the comfort of wherever you are resting. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath become slow and gentle, as though each inhale is a quiet tide rolling in, and each exhale is a tide drifting softly away. Feel the weight of your body sink deeper, releasing into the ground beneath you. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Only this moment of calm, of warmth, of ease. The world outside can wait. Right now, this story is only for you. As you listen, let my voice be like a quiet breeze brushing through the leaves, steady and lulling, guiding you further into stillness. Each word carries you deeper, softer, slower, until you are floating on the rhythm of sound, safe and peaceful. And so, our story today begins, like a flame flickering at the heart of a hearth on a cool night. Close your eyes and imagine a sky painted in velvet darkness, scattered with stars that shimmer like dust across an ancient canvas. In the distance, high above the mortal world, rises the shining peak of Mount Olympus. The air is thinner here, pure and glowing, with clouds swirling at the feet of towering cliffs. This is the dwelling place of the old gods, the Olympians, whose names have echoed across centuries: Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, and many more. But what were they really like? Were they distant and untouchable, or strangely human in their moods, in their flaws, in their moments of laughter? Tonight we wander into their world, not as historians, but as dreamers, letting the myths unfold like soft tapestries to carry us into rest. Imagine you are climbing slowly, gently, along a path that winds upward. The stones beneath your feet are warm from the sun, and the wind brushes your skin like silk. Higher and higher you drift, until the ground seems to fade away and all that remains is a golden glow above the clouds. With each step, you feel lighter, as though your body is dissolving into mist. Soon you reach a plateau where a grand palace stands, carved of marble that gleams with a pearly light. Its columns rise like giant trees, its halls echo with distant music. And here, in this ethereal place, the gods dwell, not just as symbols but as presences, as personalities full of color and texture. Zeus, the great ruler of Olympus, sits upon his throne at the heart of the palace. His eyes, they say, are like storm clouds, shifting, alive, full of thunder. He is mighty, yes, but also restless, his heart pulled by passions and tempests, just like the storms he commands. Can you feel the weight of his presence? A hush in the air, a charge of lightning waiting to fall. Yet even in his might, there is something familiar. The need for control, the yearning for respect, the tug of desires that sometimes lead him astray. He is not perfect, not distant marble, but flawed, and human in ways that make him real. Beside him often stands Hera, queen of the gods, her posture regal, her gaze sharp as a blade. She carries herself with grace that never bends, but within her heart burns the flame of jealousy, of wounded pride. She longs for loyalty, for devotion, for justice in love, and when denied, she lets her fury spill like wildfire. And yet, in the quiet moments, perhaps when she walks the gardens of Olympus alone, her fingers brushing the petals of white lilies, she feels the same loneliness mortals feel, the ache of wanting to be cherished truly. Imagine her there now, soft moonlight falling over her, her face a mixture of strength and sorrow, and let that image drift in your mind like a dream. Now listen, as the halls echo with the laughter of Apollo, god of the sun, of music, of poetry. His voice is bright and clear, like golden strings plucked in the air. He strums his lyre and the sound ripples outward, filling Olympus with light. His beauty is radiant, but so is his arrogance, for he often thinks himself untouchable, irresistible. Still, when he plays, the music has a power beyond pride. It seeps into the bones, softens the spirit, lulls even the restless into peace. Perhaps as you imagine his notes now, you too can feel them, drifting across your mind like sunbeams warming the skin, soothing you into deeper calm. And then there is Athena, wise and serene, her eyes clear as polished stone. She walks among the halls not with laughter, not with tempest, but with silence and thought. In her hand she carries the owl's wisdom, the spear of clarity. She does not rage easily, nor does she fall into careless joy, yet she embodies patience, logic, strategy, the strength to see the threads others miss. Picture her in a quiet chamber, scrolls spread before her, a candle flickering gently as she studies the secrets of existence. In her calm, you find reassurance, the steady guidance of one who knows when to act and when to simply wait. The gods, though powerful, are full of contradictions. Dionysus, with his wild revelry, brings laughter and release, yet hides within himself the shadows of madness. Ares, bold and brutal god of war, revels in conflict, but is often scorned by his kin for the chaos he loves too much. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, shines with allure, with softness, but struggles with the truth that love is never as simple as desire. Hermes darts among them, quick as a spark, always carrying messages, always stirring mischief, yet longing to be seen not just as a trickster, but as a bridge between worlds. Each one carries traits that are not far from your own: the longing for love, the hunger for respect, the sting of jealousy, the delight in laughter. And as you picture them, not as unreachable icons, but as beings with hearts and moods, you realize the Olympians were mirrors of humanity itself. They lived eternally, but they lived imperfectly. And that imperfection is what made them unforgettable. Now, as you drift in this palace of clouds, imagine wandering the golden halls, hearing echoes of voices, some sharp with anger, some warm with joy, some soft with wisdom. The air smells faintly of myrrh and olive wood, of fresh rain and sweet honey. The torches flicker on the walls, but their flames are gentle, not harsh. You pass by a chamber where Apollo's music spills like sunshine, another where Athena's owl perches silently, watching with wide eyes. In a distant corridor, Hera's voice rises in indignation, yet it softens when she thinks she is alone. Each god is alive here, not as a symbol, but as a soul. Let yourself drift deeper into this vision, the marble cool beneath your hands, the stars outside sparkling like diamonds scattered in velvet. With every step you take, you are not just walking through a palace. You are walking through the collective dreams of humankind, the myths we shaped to understand ourselves. The Olympians are not distant. They are us, amplified, adorned with crowns and thunderbolts, but still us. And as you breathe, as your mind floats softer, you realize their stories are invitations to dream, to reflect, to let your heart wander without fear. And so, the night stretches onward, and with it, our tale. The gods of Olympus stir and shimmer, their world unfolding like a tapestry before you, beckoning you to stay, to listen, to dream deeper still. And as you continue to drift, let your breath flow in its own calm rhythm, gentle as the waves that once kissed the shores of Greece. Your body is heavy now, resting deeper, every muscle sinking further into comfort. And with each passing moment, your mind opens softly to the story we share together. You are safe, cradled by silence, surrounded by timeless whispers of myths that once guided the hearts of mortals. And so, as the night enfolds you, our story continues, like a golden thread weaving itself through the tapestry of dreams. Our story today begins on the misty slopes of Mount Olympus itself, that towering realm of clouds and sky, where the gods of old once dwelled. Imagine, if you will, a sky brushed with shades of lavender and silver, as dawn stretches gently across the horizon. The mountain is alive with the hum of unseen winds, carrying scents of pine and the faintest perfume of blooming flowers. Higher and higher we drift in our imagination, until the world below is hushed and distant, and only the peak of Olympus remains, kissed by light. And there, behind veils of mist, a great palace of marble gleams, columns rising like frozen rays of the sun. This was the dwelling of the Olympians, not merely stern rulers of fate, but beings with flaws, with humor, with love, and with tempers as restless as the seas. Zeus, the king of them all, was not the silent thunderer you may have imagined. He was larger than life, yes, but also filled with laughter that could roll like storms, and eyes that gleamed with both mischief and wisdom. He ruled with lightning, yet he adored company, always seeking the music of feasts, the warmth of stories, and the comfort of being surrounded by his kin. Picture him not as an untouchable god, but as a presence both powerful and deeply human, prone to passions, jealousies, and desires. As you imagine his golden throne, let the image shimmer and soften, as if you too are reclining among the clouds, a guest at Olympus's endless banquet. Beside him, Hera sat, his queen. Her beauty was not only in her regal bearing, but in the depth of her eyes, eyes that had seen love betray her, yet still burned with a fierce dignity. Hera was not merely the goddess of marriage as people often claim, but a keeper of loyalty, a protector of promises. And though her temper was quick, behind it was a longing for harmony, for respect, for her place to be honored. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft as velvet but could harden into iron if crossed. Imagine her now, her crown catching the morning light, her robes the color of twilight skies, and sense her presence. Commanding, yes, but also undeniably tender in hidden moments. The gods were not statues of perfection. They were mirrors of humanity magnified. And so, we drift gently into their world where every god and goddess was a story, every glance a lesson, every quarrel a song. And as you listen, feel your breath lengthen, your body unwinding further, as if Olympus itself is rocking you like a cradle of clouds. Athena, the wise daughter of Zeus, emerges next in our vision. Not only was she a goddess of wisdom, but of craft and strategy, a mind sharper than any blade forged in her temples. Yet wisdom for her was not cold calculation. It was understanding, the kind that listens as much as it speaks. Imagine her calm gaze, her lips forming thoughtful words, her hands shaping patterns of cloth or guiding the strokes of an artist. Though she was born in battle, she cherished peace more dearly than most. When she walked the halls of Olympus, even the rowdiest gods grew still, for her presence carried the serenity of olive groves and the silent strength of mountains. Let her wisdom, like a gentle stream, flow through you now, clearing cluttered thoughts, leaving only calm, clear water within your mind. Nearby, Apollo strums his lyre, a melody drifting like golden sunlight over the palace halls. His music does not simply entertain. It heals, it soothes, it draws weary hearts into rest. Imagine his fingers moving gracefully across strings that seem woven from rays of light, each note melting tension from your body. Apollo was a god of light, but also of truth, and yet truth in his hands was not harsh. It was luminous like dawn rising to reveal the beauty of what was always there. His twin sister Artemis watches quietly, her silver bow resting at her side, her eyes reflecting the calm of moonlit forests. She is wild and free, yet deeply protective, her presence like the cool night air that refreshes a tired traveler. Together, the twins embodied balance, sun and moon, day and night, melody and silence. A soft laugh echoes from a nearby chamber, and it is Aphrodite, goddess of love, whose beauty shimmered not only in her form but in the way her presence stirred hearts to remember tenderness. Yet she was not always gentle. Love itself is a force both gentle and wild, lifting some to bliss while tossing others into storm. Imagine her stepping gracefully, her hair flowing like waves, her smile soft as dawn, but her gaze deep with secrets. Wherever she moved, stories of love followed, some tragic, some blissful, all unforgettable. And her laughter, light as petals carried by wind, fills the halls like a fragrance that never fades. At the edge of the feast sits Hephaestus, her husband, the god of the forge. His hands are scarred but strong, his form not as radiant as the others, yet within him burns a fire of creation. Sparks fly wherever he goes, shaping metals into wonders, crafting weapons for gods and ornaments for goddesses. Though often overlooked, his heart was steady. his devotion unmatched, his spirit glowing like embers in the hearth. Picture him now, hammering softly in some distant workshop, the rhythm of his craft like a heartbeat, steady, reassuring, grounding. And not far away, Dionysus stirs the wine, his presence a dance of ecstasy and chaos. His laughter is rich, his eyes glimmering with joy, yet beneath the revelry is a reminder that all life is fleeting, all joy fragile, and that to live is to savor each drop. Picture him leading a procession of satyrs and nymphs, the forest alive with drums, the stars spinning above. Yet even in his wildest nights, Dionysus whispered truths about release, about letting go, about surrendering to the rhythm of existence. And so, in the palace of Olympus, among feasts and quarrels, music and wisdom, passion and rivalry, the gods lived not as untouchable icons, but as eternal reflections of what it means to be alive. They loved, they fought, they created, they laughed. And in their flaws, they were strangely comforting. For if even gods could stumble, could hunger, could dream, then perhaps so too could mortals find grace in their imperfections. Breathe slowly now, as if you are seated among them, unseen but welcomed. The fire crackles softly in the great hall. The lyre hums faintly in the background. The scent of ambrosia and honey drifts through the air. Every sound is hushed, softened, as if Olympus itself is preparing for slumber. And as you sit within this gathering, your eyes grow heavy, your body lighter, your spirit drifting deeper into calm. The gods are near, but not demanding. They are companions in your dream, reminding you that even the mighty rest, even the eternal find peace in stillness. And so the night stretches, the stars wheel slowly above Mount Olympus, and our story, like a river, flows on, unhurried, soothing, endless. Relax once again, dear listener, and sink deeper into the quiet rhythm of your breath. Let your eyelids soften, heavy and serene, as you allow my voice to carry you further along this winding journey. You are safe here, surrounded by the warmth of imagination and the gentle embrace of stillness. Each word is like a lull, like the brush of cool evening air against your cheek, guiding you toward peace. Tonight our path winds even further into the mysteries of the Olympian gods, into who they were beneath the crowns, beyond the thunderbolts, and past the myths that have echoed through time. Our story today continues where we left off, with Mount Olympus glimmering high above the mortal earth, its halls alive with divine whispers. Imagine again the marble floors that stretch endlessly, polished so smooth they reflect the glow of torchlight like a pool of still water. Every step echoes softly, as though even the walls themselves are listening. The gods move through these corridors with ease, not as untouchable beings, but as figures with tempers, joys, and secrets much like our own. You might hear the faint laughter of Apollo as he tunes his golden lyre, the playful melody drifting like a breeze. Perhaps you glimpse Athena walking steadily, her eyes always thoughtful, her hand resting gently on the edge of a scroll she cannot put down. These gods are not only rulers of realms, they are keepers of emotions, mirrors of our most human selves. Zeus, the mighty one, often imagined with a thunderbolt gripped in his hand, carried more than power in his heart. He carried the burden of being both a father and a judge, a protector, and sometimes a flawed man with desires he could not always tame. He would often gaze from Olympus at the mortals below, his chest rising with pride but also with uncertainty. What if the choices he made rippled wrongly? What if his passions created storms too fierce for the fragile lives beneath him? His thunderbolt was not only a weapon, but also a symbol of responsibility, heavy and constant. Yet when the nights grew quiet and the stars draped themselves over the sky, Zeus would find solace not in power, but in silence, standing at the edge of Olympus with only the sound of crickets and distant waves to keep him company. Beside him, Hera moved with poise that commanded attention. But her heart was not the hardened stone the poet sometimes claimed. Her jealousy, her storms of anger, often rose not from cruelty, but from the ache of being overshadowed, the loneliness of standing beside a man whose attention drifted often to others. Imagine her at night, seated by the hearth with its fire crackling softly, weaving cloth with fingers that trembled not with weakness, but with longing. She loved deeply, fiercely, with a devotion that mortals rarely saw. And in her quietest moments, Hera dreamed of peace. Peace with her children, peace with Zeus, and peace with herself. Even queens, even goddesses yearned for something simple and tender. To be chosen, to be seen, to be loved without condition. As we drift along this path, let us pause and listen to Apollo, the radiant god of the sun, music, and poetry. He is often pictured shining, golden, with rays of light trailing him. But what was he really like when the music stopped? At times, Apollo was a wanderer, restless as the wind. His heart reached endlessly for perfection, for beauty in song and in life, and yet he struggled when that beauty slipped from his grasp. He could be passionate, but also quick to anger, his voice rising like a storm when met with defiance. And yet, at dawn, when the sun climbed slowly into the sky and the world stirred awake, Apollo often played melodies not for crowds or gods, but for himself. His music, delicate and aching, revealed the soul of a being who searched constantly for harmony both in the heavens and within his own heart. Picture those notes floating across Olympus, mingling with morning mist, dissolving gently into the sky. Then there was Artemis, Apollo's twin, the huntress of the wild. Independent, fierce, she roamed forests barefoot beneath the silver glow of her moon. But Artemis was not only a protector of animals and young maidens, she was also a guardian of her own solitude. Imagine her slipping through the woods, the scent of pine heavy in the cool night air, her bow resting lightly across her shoulders. She did not crave temples or worshippers in the same way others did. She craved silence, freedom, the untamed whisper of leaves swaying in the wind. To mortals, she appeared distant, cold even, but within her chest beat a heart that loved quietly, in ways few could see. She loved the rustle of deer moving through ferns, the stillness of lakes reflecting stars, and the soft rhythm of her own footsteps on forest soil. Artemis, in truth, was not only a goddess of the hunt, but of serenity, reminding us that strength is often found in the quiet refusal to be caged. And what of Poseidon, the ruler of seas, whose waves have frightened and fascinated sailors for countless centuries? To the mortal world, he was unpredictable, his trident striking storms from calm waters without warning. But within Olympus, Poseidon carried a laughter that rumbled like distant thunder. His heart, though easily stirred to rage, was also playful, mischievous as the tides themselves. In moments of quiet, Poseidon loved to carve small figures from shells, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as they shaped delicate patterns. He collected coral and pearls, not for wealth, but as tokens of the beauty he found in his watery domain. In truth, Poseidon was a spirit of moods, the calm tide one moment, the crashing surf the next. And yet, deep beneath his storms, there was loyalty, a love for his brothers and for the vast living ocean that had always been his true companion. As you drift further into relaxation, notice how each god, though wrapped in grandeur and myth, carried shadows and vulnerabilities. They were flawed, they were searching, they were mirrors of our humanity wrapped in eternal form. Imagine now, sitting quietly at the edge of Olympus, a soft breeze carrying the fragrance of ambrosia flowers. The night sky above glows with constellations, and in that glow, you feel the closeness of these gods, not as untouchable beings, but as companions in the endless mystery of existence. Each star, each flicker, reminds you that even the mighty seek comfort, even the divine seek understanding. And in that realization, your heart grows lighter, your breath softer, your body more at ease. Allow yourself to sink deeper into this thought, dear listener. The Olympians were not only rulers of myths, they were storytellers of the human soul, each carrying the burdens of joy, jealousy, ambition, and love. As you rest here, floating in this world between dream and wakefulness, let their stories become your lullaby. Let the crackling of imaginary fires, the hush of mountain winds, and the distant murmur of waves soothe you further into calm. You are safe, drifting, listening, breathing. And the story, like the night, will always continue, as steady and as endless as the stars. Relax, my friend. Feel the night folding around you like a silken blanket, weightless yet comforting, guiding you deeper into stillness. Each breath you take becomes smoother, more effortless, carrying away the remnants of the day. In this deepening calm, the story continues, weaving gently through the quiet corners of your mind, like a stream gliding over smooth pebbles. Let us return now to the mountain peaks and sacred halls, where the Olympian gods walked in all their majesty and mystery. Our story tonight drifts back to the sprawling heights of Mount Olympus, where golden clouds often rested, and the air shimmered with divine presence. You might imagine yourself floating closer to those heights, borne gently upon a soft current of dreamlike air. As you ascend, the worries of the mortal world grow faint and small, until all that remains is the serene glow of Olympus above. The gods themselves, though powerful, carried their own quiet secrets, their own hidden hearts, some filled with longing, others with laughter, and some with eternal struggles that even immortality could not resolve. In the radiant halls of the gods, Hera lingered near her throne, her posture regal, yet her gaze softened by reflection. Though often remembered for her jealous watchfulness, she also embodied the sacred stillness of devotion and the endless rhythm of protection. When mortals whispered prayers for safe marriages, or for bonds unbroken by distance, it was Hera who leaned close to listen. Picture her now, her golden veil glinting softly in the firelight, as she lays her hand upon a weaving loom. Each thread gleams like a star, and with each movement she binds love, loyalty, and the invisible fabric of family into the tapestry of the world. Yet nearby, Ares, her son, paced with restless energy. He was war, yes, but not always in the way mortals feared. He was the burning pulse of courage in a soldier's chest, the strength that helped a mother protect her child, the thunder of resistance when injustice sought to take root. His eyes gleamed like polished bronze, yet his spirit wavered between raw fury and a desire for recognition. Sometimes, in the quiet, he sat beneath the shadow of his own armor, wondering if mortals misunderstood him, seeing only blood when his heart yearned to be known as more than rage. As the divine family gathered, Hermes slipped into the room without sound, his sandals whispering across marble floors. His laughter was soft, playful, and he carried with him the cool scent of night winds. Messenger, trickster, protector of travelers, Hermes was the breeze that nudged a ship toward safe harbor, the unseen hand that shielded a weary wanderer. He leaned casually against a pillar, eyes bright with mischief, yet his presence carried warmth. With each story he told, the gods smiled, their heaviness lightened by his wit. Imagine him leaning near you now, whispering encouragement as if he were guiding your own dreams safely through the paths of slumber. And then, in the shadows of the hall, Hades appeared, not unwelcome, not menacing, but calm, steady, cloaked in quiet dignity. Too often feared, too rarely understood, he did not rise with the sun or stride with thunder. Instead, he ruled the gentle stillness beneath the earth, where roots drew life and souls found rest. His voice was low, like the hush of deep caverns, and his gaze was kind in its solemnity. He did not crave dominion, nor did he revel in cruelty. Rather, he ensured balance, the sacred truth that all things return, all things are renewed, and nothing is ever truly lost. As he walked among his kin, shadows curled at his heels, not in menace but as loyal companions. It was Demeter who turned her face toward him, her golden hair spilling like fields of wheat. She was warmth, abundance, the fragrance of ripened fruit, and the laughter of children in the harvest. Yet within her heart lingered sorrow, the eternal ache of separation from her beloved daughter, Persephone. Every time Hades entered the room, her soul trembled, remembering both her loss and the cycle of reunion that governed the seasons. Still, when their eyes met, there was recognition, a thread of understanding between them, delicate and eternal. like the changing of the earth itself. And so the Olympians gathered, each with their burdens, each with their gifts. The fire crackled in the center of the hall, and the air shimmered with divine presence. Yet beyond the grandeur, they were beings who loved, feared, laughed, and wept, not unlike mortals, though with lives that stretched beyond time. Their rivalries were fierce, their joys boundless, their griefs as deep as oceans. And in this gathering, you can sense that gods, like humans, long to be seen, to be known, to be remembered not as symbols, but as souls. As the night upon Olympus deepened, the voices grew softer, like waves retreating into the distance. The air carried the faint scent of ambrosia, honey-sweet and luminous, drifting upward to the sky. And if you listen closely, with your mind quiet and your heart open, you might hear their laughter echoing faintly, blending with the stars above. Now allow yourself to drift deeper into this world. Imagine lying upon soft moss at the mountain's edge, gazing at the divine palace above. The stars are brilliant, yet not harsh. They glow like lanterns, guiding you further into dream. Every breath eases you, loosens you, settles you. The gods, with all their stories, now walk gently in your imagination, keeping you company as you float toward rest. Relax now. Our story continues to unfold, your breathing steady and soft, with each word you drift guiding you deeper into stillness, wrapped in timeless myth and the lull of sleep, safe, as though the earth itself is cradling you in its embrace. The flicker of thought quiets, like candle flames fading one by one in a hushed chamber. And in this silence, let us continue our story, floating back to the mountain peaks and the divine halls where the gods themselves shaped the fate of worlds. The dawn upon Olympus arrived not in blinding brilliance, but in a slow cascade of light, shimmering across marble columns and golden gates. The palace gleamed like dew upon petals, its corridors alive with whispers of eternity. You might imagine yourself walking there, feet brushing against cool stone, your steps soundless yet accompanied by a chorus of distant harps. This is where the gods dwelled, though even here immortality did not erase yearning. At the heart of the hall sat Zeus, his presence vast yet softened by the glow of morning. Often remembered as thunder and lightning, he also carried the stillness of a sky after the storm. His eyes, deep as oceans, searched the horizon through tall windows, watching the mortal world stir to life. Farmers guiding their oxen, children laughing in dusty courtyards, rivers swelling with melted snow. Each small movement of humanity whispered into his awareness. Though he bore the weight of justice and kingship, there were moments, like this one, when his heart longed only for simplicity, for the quiet joy of watching life unfold without his intervention. Beside him, Athena stood tall, her armor glimmering faintly, though she carried no spear. She was wisdom, yes, but also patience, and the delicate courage of thought before action. In her gaze was the calm of libraries filled with unread scrolls, the balance of a teacher's hand guiding a pupil, the still clarity of a lake unbroken by ripples. Mortals often prayed to her for victory, yet they forgot she listened too for prayers of peace, for resolution without blood, for the wisdom to choose rightly when choices seemed impossible. As she spoke softly to Zeus, her words were measured, yet they carried the strength of 1,000 armies, the power of truth itself. Not far away, Aphrodite moved through the chamber, her presence like a breeze carrying the fragrance of blooming roses. She was beauty, yes, but her essence was far more profound. In her was the yearning that pulled two souls together across distance, the softness that healed wounds unspoken, the spark that made hearts race with wonder. She laughed gently as she walked, trailing her fingers across golden pillars, and the air around her seemed to hum with warmth. Yet behind her luminous smile rested a tenderness few glimpsed, a quiet ache for love that was not worship, but equal companionship. She longed to be cherished not only for allure, but for the soul beneath it, glowing with gentle vulnerability. Hephaestus, her husband, lingered near his forge, his hands darkened with soot, though his eyes shone with devotion. To mortals, he was the master of fire and craft, shaping weapons and wonders beyond imagination. But within him lived the quiet pride of creation, the joy of hammering iron into beauty, of molding raw earth into forms that breathed purpose. He worked not for glory, but for love of the craft itself. His limp slowed him, yet never deterred him. His hands spoke where his voice did not. Though others sometimes mocked him, he bore their laughter with silent strength, his heart fixed upon the eternal rhythm of fire and anvil. And when Aphrodite's gaze met his, even fleetingly, a tender calm blossomed between them. Two souls bound by a thread not easily severed. Beyond the forge and the thrones, Artemis wandered in quiet solitude. The goddess of the hunt, of moonlight, of untamed forests, she carried with her the whisper of rustling leaves, the glimmer of silver light upon streams. Imagine her now, bow slung across her shoulder, her steps soft as foxes through grass. She was protector of maidens, guardian of innocence, fierce and untouchable, yet her heart softened in the presence of wild creatures. When deer rested their heads in her lap, when wolves howled to her moon, she answered with love deeper than language. To mortals, she was a mystery, elusive and untamed, yet she was also the lull of starlight upon restless minds, the promise of safety in the quiet of night. Her twin, Apollo, stood nearby, radiant as the sun, his golden hair catching every gleam of light. Yet his brilliance was not only in music or prophecy, but in the joy he drew from harmony. When he plucked his lyre, the air itself shimmered. When he sang, rivers slowed to listen. But beyond his brightness, Apollo carried shadows too, moments of pride, of wounded vanity, of longing to be loved without fear of his light. He guided mortals toward healing, yet within himself, he sometimes yearned for rest, for someone to soothe his own soul as he soothed theirs. Still, he glowed, for to shine was his gift and his burden. Together the gods filled Olympus with their presence, a family of contradictions, of rivalries and affections, of grandeur and vulnerability. Their voices rose and fell like waves, sometimes clashing, sometimes blending into harmony. And as they lived and argued, laughed and wept, the world below mirrored them, for mortals carried in their hearts fragments of divinity: love, wrath, wisdom, longing, joy, and grief. The gods were not far away. They were within, reflections of the same vast mysteries that mortals carried in smaller scale. And so, as the day stretched onward on Olympus, a golden stillness settled, and the divine halls pulsed with quiet life. The gods were more than myths. They were mirrors of the soul, eternal yet fragile, mighty yet yearning. And as their stories ripple into your mind, you find yourself drifting deeper into rest, carried by their timeless voices, lulled by their eternal presence. Breathe deeply now. Feel your body loosening, your spirit lightening, as though Olympus itself has cradled you in its clouds. Each word drifts like mist, gentle and soothing, carrying you closer to sleep. The story lingers, but it will wait for you, unfolding softly as dreams take you further into peace. Relax now, my friend. Settle into the comfort of wherever you are resting. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath become slow and gentle, as though each inhale is a quiet tide rolling in, and each exhale is a tide drifting softly away. Do subscribe only if you genuinely like it. Let yourself sink deeper, your eyelids heavy, your breathing slow. Imagine the clouds around Olympus parting like curtains, revealing more secrets of the gods, each step drawing you further into their timeless world. The air is soft and fragrant, as though every breeze carries the memory of blooming orchards and rain upon stone. You are safe here, wrapped in the gentle murmur of immortals whose voices rise like lullabies across the peaks. Far across the marble hall where Apollo's golden notes faded, another sound stirred, a low rumble, deep as shifting earth. Ares, the god of war, entered, his armor clinking with restrained fire. Mortals feared him, and with reason, for he embodied the chaos of battle, the clash of steel, the cries of soldiers. Yet here, upon Olympus, his presence softened. Without bloodshed, he was simply a restless spirit, pacing like a caged lion. Beneath his fiery eyes lay a truth mortals rarely saw. War to him was not glory, but compulsion. He did not crave pain, but the surge of energy, the storm that overtook him when steel met steel. And in quiet moments, when the halls stilled, he sat with head bowed, yearning for peace he could never fully hold. Beside him, often overlooked, lingered Hestia, the goddess of hearth and home. Her presence was not thunderous, nor radiant, but steady, warm, enduring. Imagine the comfort of fire crackling on a cold night, the fragrance of bread baking, the sound of loved ones speaking softly around a table. That was Hestia. She was the flame that never died, the constant in chaos, the heart of Olympus itself. Though mortals rarely told grand tales of her, they whispered prayers to her daily, lighting fires in her honor. For where there was warmth, safety, and belonging, there was Hestia. She embodied simplicity, yet her simplicity was profound, reminding gods and mortals alike that love and home outweighed all crowns and conquests. Then came Hermes, swift-footed, his laughter carrying through corridors like wind chimes. His eyes sparkled with mischief, his sandals barely touching the floor. To mortals he was messenger, trickster, guide of souls. Yet within he was more than cunning, he was freedom itself. He embodied curiosity, the joy of discovery, the exhilaration of movement. When mortals prayed for luck on a journey, or whispered desperate words as thieves, Hermes listened without judgment. He cherished life's in-betweens, the roads, the transitions, the spaces where mortals grew. And though others accused him of deceit, he knew that sometimes mischief was mercy, sometimes a trick was a gift in disguise. His laughter reminded Olympus never to grow too heavy, never to lose the spark of playfulness amidst eternal duty. And there, in shadow yet unforgotten, stood Hades, lord of the underworld. Dark-robed, solemn, his eyes deep as caverns untouched by sun. Mortals trembled at his name, imagining cruelty and endless gloom. But within him lay not malice but inevitability, the stillness of endings, the dignity of cycles. He did not seek souls, they came to him as rivers flow to the sea. He ruled not with rage, but with quiet order, keeping balance where chaos might otherwise reign. His love for Persephone, tender and enduring, revealed his softer soul, a yearning for connection in a realm of silence. Though feared, Hades was not cruel. He was necessary, the quiet reminder that all beginnings carry endings, and all endings fold gently into new beginnings. Persephone herself shone like springtime breaking through shadow, her presence a song of renewal. When she walked, blossoms sprouted in her wake, her laughter scattering petals upon marble floors. Yet her beauty was not fragile, it was resilience, the courage of life returning after long winters. She lived in two worlds, above, among sunlight and songbirds, below in halls of silence and shadow. This duality made her radiant, for she embodied balance, the promise that even in darkness, light waits to return. Mortals prayed to her for harvests, for rebirth, for comfort in sorrow. And she answered with compassion, carrying in her heart the tender strength of one who knew both joy and grief. Elsewhere, near pools of glimmering water, sat Dionysus, a cup of wine in his hand, his laughter rich as music. He was the god of revelry, of ecstasy, of freedom from restraint. To some he was chaos, to others salvation. Mortals who despaired found joy in his gifts. Those who felt trapped found liberation in his festivals. Yet beneath the wine and dance lay something gentler. Dionysus understood pain, loneliness, the ache of being misunderstood. His revels were not mere excess, but medicine for weary souls. Permission to breathe, to feel, to abandon fear for a moment. He was joy born of sorrow, freedom carved from chains, laughter that rose even from tears. So many gods, so many facets of life reflected in divine form. On Olympus, they were not flawless idols, but mirrors of human truth, magnified and eternal. They quarreled, they loved, they faltered, they yearned. Their myths, told and retold, were not distant fables, but gentle reminders that even in imperfection, there is divinity. Each carried within them a lesson, a whisper to mortals seeking meaning. As the day waned upon Olympus, golden light dipped into twilight. stars peeking softly above the peaks. Torches glowed along the marble halls, their flames swaying like lullabies. The gods, weary yet eternal, settled into silence, each lost in thought. Zeus gazed upon the horizon. Athena turned to her scrolls. Aphrodite hummed softly. Hephaestus stoked his forge. Artemis lifted her eyes to the moon. Apollo tuned his lyre. And somewhere, far beneath, Hades watched the stars shimmer faintly through cracks of earth, Persephone's hand resting gently in his. And you, drifting beside them in imagination, feel the rhythm of their timeless world seep into your being. Each god leaves behind a spark within you. Zeus's steadiness, Athena's wisdom, Aphrodite's tenderness, Hephaestus's perseverance, Artemis's purity, Apollo's radiance, Ares's courage, Hestia's warmth, Hermes's freedom, Hades's dignity, Persephone's renewal, Dionysus's joy. They are not only in Olympus, they are in you, in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every dream. Let that thought cradle you now. Breathe in, slow and deep, as if drawing starlight into your lungs. Breathe out softer still, releasing every weight. Your mind is calm, your body heavy, the story carrying you into sleep. The gods remain watching kindly, whispering not commands but blessings, gentle reminders that you are whole, you are enough, you are part of the eternal song. And so you drift, peacefully, into dreams, Olympus glowing softly in the distance, timeless and serene. The night upon Olympus was not like mortal night. It was velvet and luminous, stitched with stars that glowed brighter than earthly eyes could ever perceive. The constellations above shimmered not as distant lights, but as living shapes, echoes of stories the gods themselves had set into the heavens. Each spark was a memory, a myth, a lesson carried aloft for eternity. As you drift deeper, imagine lying on the cool marble steps of Olympus, the warmth of a gentle torch nearby, the air filled with a fragrant mix of myrtle, laurel, and wild thyme. The gods' laughter had softened to murmurs, and the mountain itself seemed to exhale, peaceful, as if even eternity rested. But one figure was not resting. Far at the edge of Olympus, upon a solitary ledge, sat Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus to gift fire to humankind. He was not truly welcomed among the gods, yet not wholly exiled. His presence was tolerated, perhaps even secretly respected. Prometheus's gaze stretched toward the mortal world below, his heart filled with compassion for fragile lives struggling in the cold. To him, fire was not just flame, it was hope, progress, survival. His sacrifice had brought both suffering and salvation, for Zeus had punished him cruelly, and still his heart ached not for himself, but for humanity. In him, you see endurance, and the selfless spark that keeps mortals alive against all odds. Nearby, Selene, goddess of the moon, glided silently across the sky, her silver chariot illuminating every valley and wave below. Her presence was tender, like a lullaby sung to the earth. Each night, she carried her light not for the gods, but for mortals wandering in darkness. Lovers, travelers, and poets whispered her name in gratitude, her silver glow guiding their paths. Though her role was quiet, her constancy was unshaken. She was proof that beauty lay not in thunder or fire, but in quiet devotion, in soft light that returns night after night without fail. And behind her, the radiant figure of Eos, goddess of dawn, prepared for her daily task. She was forever eager, forever new, her fingers rosy as she stretched across the horizon. To mortals, she brought morning, hope, beginnings. To the gods, she was the ever-turning reminder that even the darkest night yields to light. Her smile carried the freshness of dew, her presence the promise of renewal. If Selene lulled the world into sleep, Eos kissed it awake, tender yet insistent, whispering, "Rise, begin again." In Olympus's gardens, Demeter wandered, her hands brushing across blossoms and wheat stalks that grew abundantly at her will. She was the giver of grain, the mother of harvests, the nurturer of mortals. Yet she carried sorrow too, for each year Persephone descended into the underworld, leaving Demeter's heart aching. In her grief, fields withered, frost crept, the earth fell barren. But when Persephone returned, joy spilled from Demeter's soul, and the earth bloomed again. Through her, mortals learned of cycles, of loss and return, of grief and healing. She embodied the rhythm of seasons, reminding all that love could turn even sorrow into growth. Farther still, by the sea's edge where Olympus touched foam and spray, Poseidon brooded. His trident gleamed faintly, his eyes as restless as waves. To mortals he was tempest and tide, lord of oceans, shaper of storms. Yet within him pulsed an endless duality, fury and calm, destruction and creation. For Poseidon the sea was both cradle and grave, abundant and unforgiving. Sailors prayed for his mercy, fishermen thanked him for bounty, and kings feared his wrath. Yet here on Olympus his rage softened, replaced by a deep melancholy, the loneliness of one who belonged more to the ocean's depths than to the halls of gods. He was power vast as the sea itself, yet his heart longed for harmony that always slipped beyond his grasp. As night deepened, you notice how the gods are not distant beings of perfection, but mirrors of life itself. Love, grief, mischief, resilience, joy, sorrow, endurance. Each embodies truths mortals know, truths they live every day. And perhaps that is why their stories endure. Not because they are flawless, but because they are familiar, reflections of humanity told in divine shape. Hebe, goddess of youth, moved quietly among them, carrying cups of nectar. She smiled, radiant, her presence light as birdsong. Mortals rarely invoked her name, yet her essence touched all. Renewal, vitality, the fleeting beauty of youth. Every sip of nectar she poured carried not only sweetness but the reminder that life, though precious and fragile, could be refreshed. She embodied beginnings, innocence, the glow of mornings that feel eternal even though they fade. Ganymede, too, served nectar, his beauty immortalized by Zeus himself who had carried him to Olympus. Some envied him, others adored him, yet his humility remained. He poured with grace, never boastful, his youth eternal. In his gentle presence one could see the godly desire not only for power, but for companionship, for beauty cherished not as conquest, but as devotion. And high above, the stars burned brighter still. They were not just lights, they were God's eternal stories written across the night. Orion the hunter strode proudly, Cassiopeia reclined upon her throne, Andromeda stretched her chained arms. Each constellation whispered myths to those below, teaching mortals lessons of hubris, love, sacrifice, and fate. The sky itself was a book, and every gaze upward was a prayer to understand. As you lie among these myths, safe in the soft embrace of starlight, your breathing slows, your mind drifts. The gods seem to fade, not into absence, but into you, each leaving a fragment, a spark, a gentle blessing. Selene's calm light, Eos's renewal, Demeter's nurturing love, Poseidon's vast power, Hebe's glow of youth, Prometheus's sacrifice. You feel them settle in your heart like embers glowing faintly in the night. The mountain grows still. Even the gods rest. The torches flicker low, the lyres are silent, and only the whisper of eternal wind curls through the marble halls. Above, stars shimmer. Below, mortals dream. Between them you drift, carried gently into a slumber that feels both mortal and divine. Olympus does not vanish. It lingers in your dreams, timeless, patient, waiting to whisper again whenever you close your eyes and return. The halls of Olympus glowed with a gentle light, as though the marble itself breathed warmth. The night was deep, yet time here did not flow as it did below on earth. For the gods, moments stretched and folded, days were not numbered, and eternity was their companion. Near the eastern terraces, Hestia sat by the ever-burning flame, her presence quiet but indispensable. She was the goddess of the hearth, and though her role seemed modest compared to Zeus's thunder or Athena's wisdom, she was the anchor of Olympus. Her fire never dimmed. It warmed the gods, reminded them of home, of unity. Mortals too revered her, for every household fire was her reflection. When families gathered for meals, when warmth pushed away the cold. Hestia's unseen touch was there. She did not seek grandeur, and that was her strength. Her power was in gentleness, in constancy, in holding together what others might overlook. Not far from her, the Muses gathered. 9 radiant sisters, each carrying a gift for humankind. Calliope with her scrolls, Clio with her histories, Erato with her love songs, Terpsichore with her dances, and the others. Each muse embodied the beauty of inspiration. They filled the air with music so soft it seemed the stars themselves leaned closer to listen. Mortals prayed to them when creating art, writing poetry or weaving tales. Yet here they were not divine figures but joyous sisters, laughing, coaxing one another to sing louder, dance freer. Through them, mortals learned that creativity was divine, that every spark of song or poem carried the whisper of Olympus. Apollo often joined them, his golden lyre shining under starlight. His fingers plucked strings that shimmered like sunlight on rivers, his voice both soothing and commanding. To mortals he was the god of music, prophecy, and healing, radiant as the sun itself. Yet here on Olympus he was also a brother, a friend, a lover of harmony. He moved easily between roles, healer, artist, prophet. Mortals feared his arrows but adored his music, and in his duality lay the truth. Light, though life-giving, could also burn. Artemis, his twin, preferred the silence of shadowed groves. The huntress goddess, protector of the wild, carried her bow with grace, her quiver brimming with arrows tipped in moonlight. She wandered the mountain's forest edges, her silver hounds padding by her side. Though fierce, she was also tender, shielding animals and maidens, cherishing independence above all. Mortals prayed for her aid in childbirth, for safe hunts, for protection in wild lands. To watch her was to see freedom embodied, a spirit unchained, untamed, eternal as the moon that crowned her. Dionysus, in contrast, filled Olympus with laughter and song. Crowned with ivy and carrying his cup, he led revelries that loosened even the sternest brows. He was god of wine, ecstasy, transformation, and his presence was both joyous and unsettling. Mortals adored him for release from burdens, for moments of rapture and freedom. Yet Dionysus carried mystery too, the truth that joy and madness were close companions, that in losing oneself, one might also find something new. On Olympus, he was both mischief and revelation, reminding gods and mortals alike that order was not the only path, that chaos too could birth beauty. Above, Nyx, the primordial goddess of night, drifted unseen but deeply felt. Even Zeus respected her, for she was older than the Olympians born from chaos itself. To mortals, she was a shrouded mystery, mother of dreams and destinies. Here, her cloak of stars unfolded, vast and eternal, and every being, god, mortal or spirit, felt her presence in the quiet between breaths. Her power was subtle yet infinite, a reminder that even gods were children of something greater. At the far edge of Olympus, Thanatos, spirit of peaceful death, lingered like a shadow. Unlike Hades's stern rule or the terror of violent ends, Thanatos was gentle, inevitable, kind. Mortals rarely prayed for him, yet in their final moments his hand was often the softest touch they knew. He was not feared on Olympus, for he carried no malice, only the truth of endings, the balance to every beginning. His presence was steady, reminding all that eternity itself owed a debt to time. As the gods and spirits moved through their eternal night, the mountain hummed with quiet energy. It was not chaos, but harmony of opposites, laughter and sorrow, light and dark, fire and water, beginnings and endings. Olympus was not merely a palace, but a reflection of existence itself, every force and emotion personified. And there, at the highest throne, Zeus himself sat, watching. The king of gods, wielder of thunderbolts, master of skies. To mortals he was ruler, protector, punisher, but here his grandeur was tempered by weariness. His rule was not effortless. It was a burden carried, decisions weighed, storms commanded with care. Even Zeus was not immune to doubt, though he cloaked it beneath lightning and decree. For what was leadership? if not the constant balance between fear and trust. Beside him Hera sat, queen of Olympus, goddess of marriage, dignity, and resolve. Mortals often told stories of her jealousy, her wrath, yet they overlooked her loyalty, her strength. She bore the weight of partnership, of sovereignty shared, of being both companion and counterbalance to the Storm King. Hera's gaze was sharp, her presence commanding, but her heart was one of devotion. She embodied not weakness in jealousy, but strength in demanding respect, loyalty, and truth. Together, Zeus and Hera watched over Olympus, their thrones gleaming in torchlight, their silence heavy with thought. Around them, gods feasted, muses sang, nymphs danced, heroes whispered, and above all, the stars kept their vigil, eternal, unwavering. As you drift further, your own body softens into rest, your breathing steady, your heart calmed. The gods do not vanish as you sleep. They remain eternal, whispering their stories through the rustle of leaves, the crash of waves, the glow of fire, the warmth of sun, the mystery of night. Each one is not distant, but near, for their myths live not only in marble halls, but in every mortal heart. They remind you that love, grief, joy, and wonder are not fleeting. They are divine, timeless, shared between gods and humankind. And so Olympus grows quiet. The fire of Hestia flickers softly. Apollo's lyre rests. Artemis's bow lowers. Dionysus's laughter fades into murmurs. The muses' voices settle into silence. The stars breathe calmly above, and you too drift into that stillness, held in the same eternal rhythm, the rhythm of gods, of life, of dream. The mountain slumbered under a canopy of stars, yet Olympus never truly slept, for even in stillness its essence breathed, each god and goddess a heartbeat within its eternal body. The air shimmered, perfumed with ambrosia, threaded with music that was not heard but felt, like the low hum of existence itself. In a quiet corner, far from feasts and thrones, sat Hephaestus, the divine smith. His forge glowed with embers that never cooled, the rhythm of his hammer echoing like a heartbeat across stone. Mortals often thought of him as lame, flawed, cast aside by the grandeur of Olympus. Yet in truth, his craft sustained gods and mortals alike. It was his hands that shaped Zeus's thunderbolts, Athena's armor, Hermes' winged sandals. His creations were not merely tools, they were embodiments of divine essence, art bound with purpose. Hephaestus was a reminder that divinity was not only in beauty or power, but also in endurance, in mastery, in the quiet patience of creation. Though mocked at times, though wounded by rejection, he found dignity in the forge's fire. His hammer's ring was not noise, but song, each strike shaping destiny itself. For mortals, he was the god of artisans, builders, and inventors, a beacon for those whose worth was not in appearance, but in what they made with their hands and minds. Beside him often wandered Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, desire, and love. Where she moved, the air softened, colors deepened, hearts quickened. Mortals saw her as capricious, irresistible, the embodiment of passion's fire. Yet here on Olympus she was more than allure. She was tenderness and sorrow, joy and ache, the full spectrum of love's gift and burden. She loved many, yet love did not come without pain. Her union with Hephaestus was strained, her heart often tangled elsewhere. Still, their connection told a deeper truth, that beauty and craft, though different, belonged side by side. Aphrodite's smile could soothe wars, her tears could stir empathy, her presence could remind even the proudest gods that vulnerability was not weakness. Love was both balm and wound, and in her both dwelled eternally. Eros, her son, danced near her, golden bow in hand. Mortals feared his arrows, for they brought irresistible longing, sometimes joy, sometimes ruin. Yet to watch him was to understand that desire was not cruelty. It was part of being alive. His laughter was quick, his wings beating like a bird's heart, his gaze mischievous but wise. He moved between mortals and gods with ease, for love bound them all. Through him, Olympus whispered that passion was a force beyond control, a fire no one could fully master. Nearby, Ares strode with restless steps, his armor gleaming, his eyes aflame. He was god of war, yet not of strategy. That belonged to Athena. Ares embodied raw conflict, the bloodlust of battle, the roar of clashing steel. Mortals often cursed him, prayed for his absence, yet could not deny his presence in every battlefield. On Olympus, Ares was both feared and pitied. His rage burned hot but short, his victories hollow. Yet he was not cruelty alone, he carried a fierce sense of honor, of loyalty to those he cherished. Beneath the roar of war drums lay a heart that longed for recognition, for purpose beyond endless strife. To mortals he was terror, but to the gods, he was also a mirror, reminding them that conflict lived within all hearts, divine and human alike. And where Ares stormed, Athena watched with steady eyes. Born from Zeus's head in a burst of wisdom and war, she carried both spear and scroll, shield and strategy. Unlike Ares, she saw war not as chaos, but as discipline, a means to protect order, justice, and civilization. Mortals revered her as patron of cities, of knowledge, of crafts and reason. On Olympus, she was calm, yet commanding, her wisdom flowing like a clear river. She guided, counseled, corrected. Her presence steadied others, for in her lay balance, intellect with action, foresight with courage. She embodied the truth that victory without wisdom was ruin, and wisdom without courage was silence. Mortals who sought her aid often found not just answers, but the strength to act upon them. As these gods moved and breathed within Olympus, stories intertwined. Hephaestus's fire fed Athena's designs. Ares's rage was tempered by her strategies. Aphrodite's beauty softened storms, and Eros's arrows bound even enemies in sudden truce. The mountain was not a place of isolation, but of weaving threads, each god and goddess, each spirit and muse, forming a tapestry vast as the night sky. At times, Hermes darted among them, carrying laughter, mischief, and messages. His caduceus glimmered as he slipped between worlds, the only one free to walk Olympus, earth, and underworld alike. To mortals, he was patron of travelers, merchants, thieves, and heralds. On Olympus, he was the bridge, the reminder that no realm existed apart. His wit kept feasts lively, his speed kept peace. His cunning reminded even mighty Zeus that sharpness of mind was as vital as thunder's roar. When Hermes passed, Hades' shadow was never far behind. Not because he sought Olympus often, but because every mention of death carried his weight. Though he ruled the underworld, Hades was not cruel. He was stern, inevitable, keeper of souls and order below. Mortals feared him, yet they owed him respect. For without him there would be no balance, no return, no cycles of life and death. On Olympus he was distant, seldom present, but his name carried gravity. Even gods paused when they spoke of him, for he was the boundary no one could escape. And so Olympus lived, breathed, and endured, not in still perfection, but in movement, in contrast, in story. The gods were not flawless beings, but reflections of life magnified. Its love and fury, its wisdom and folly, its beauty and pain. Mortals shaped their myths not only to honor them, but to understand themselves, to see in divine quarrels and passions their own struggles echoed. Now, as your breath slows and your body sinks deeper into rest, let these images soften in your mind. Hephaestus's steady hammering, Aphrodite's gentle smile, Ares's roar fading into silence, Athena's calm counsel, Hermes's quick laughter, all drift like feathers across your thoughts. They are not demanding your attention, but offering it, gifts of story, fragments of eternity, lulling you gently toward dream. For in dreams, Olympus is never far, and the gods, though eternal, become companions to your slumber, keeping watch in myth and memory. The night on Olympus deepened. Stars draped themselves like silver embroidery across the heavens, and the moon's pale glow bathed the peaks in a soft, ethereal light. The feasts grew quiet, laughter dimmed, and even the fire at Hephaestus's forge glowed lower, as though the mountain itself knew the time for stillness had come. One by one, the gods retreated to their chosen places, Some lingered in solitude, others paired together in whispered conversation, while a few, restless as ever, kept their eternal watch. Olympus was never truly silent, for eternity has no sleep, but it carried a rhythm like a lullaby, a harmony that soothed both divine and mortal minds. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, remained at the center, her flame unwavering. Mortals often forgot her, for she did not wage wars, weave beauty, or thunder commands. Yet she was the quiet heart of Olympus. Without her, the fire would falter, and with it the very bond that held gods and mortals in kinship. Her warmth radiated beyond halls and temples, reaching into every mortal home where bread was baked, stories told, and families gathered. She was not spectacle but constancy, and in her lived the truth that even the mightiest needed a place of belonging. Hera too lingered, her gaze proud yet softened by the glow. Queen of the gods, she had borne much sorrow, betrayals, jealousies, endless trials. Yet beneath her sternness was resilience, the dignity of one who endured storms yet never yielded. Mortals prayed to her for marriage, for family, for fidelity, knowing she embodied both the pain and the strength of those bonds. On Olympus, she was sometimes feared, often misunderstood, but always honored. For Hera was more than Zeus's consort. She was protector, guardian, and a reminder that love, though fraught, was sacred. Zeus, high upon his throne, surveyed it all. To mortals, he was thunder and lightning, ruler and judge. Yet here in the hush of night, he seemed less like a tyrant and more like an ancient tree, vast, rooted, sheltering, yet scarred by storms. His might was beyond question, but so too were his flaws. He had erred, faltered, wandered in passions and pride. And still he carried the weight of Olympus, a crown that could not be cast aside. His strength was not only in thunderbolts, but in bearing the endless burdens of rule. In him, mortals saw the truth of power, that it was not free but carried responsibility as heavy as the sky itself. Around him shimmered goddesses and gods who each bore their own light. Demeter, with her nurturing touch, promised the return of spring after every winter. Dionysus, with wine-stained lips, whispered of ecstasy, liberation, and the joy of surrendering control. Artemis, moonlit and untamed, kept her vigil over the wilds, reminding mortals that freedom was as sacred as order. Apollo, radiant and sure, carried the music of prophecy and healing, sunlight and truth. Together, they formed a circle of contrasts, order and chaos, passion and restraint, creation and destruction. Olympus was not harmony by nature, but by balance, each god holding a fragment of truth that alone would be incomplete, but together formed the whole of existence. And so the mountain breathed, eternal yet alive, its stories carried down to mortals in whispers, dreams, and myths. For the truth was this: the gods were never distant beings on a far peak. They lived in every human heart. In the courage to fight for justice, Athena walked beside you. In the sting of sudden passion, Eros's arrow had found you. In the comfort of a warm hearth, Hestia was present. In the cry of war, Ares roared. In the stillness of death, Hades waited with dignity. And in the laughter of a child, in the song of the wind, in the flicker of firelight, Olympus breathed. The storytellers of old knew this, which is why they passed these tales from tongue to tongue, from fire to fire. The gods were not meant to be flawless idols, but mirrors, magnifications of human experience. To speak of them was to speak of love, of anger, of wisdom, of folly. Myths were not chains that bound mortals to worship, but wings that helped them understand themselves and the vast, mysterious universe around them. Now, as your body sinks deeper into rest, imagine yourself upon that mountain, the air cool and crisp, the stars so near you could almost reach out and touch them. The laughter of Dionysus drifts faintly through the air, softened by distance. Athena's voice, calm and guiding, hums like a river in the background of your thoughts. Hephaestus's forge glows far below, its warmth steady. Aphrodite's presence lingers like perfume, sweet and gentle, and Hestia's fire glows before you. welcoming, unthreatening, eternal. You sit among them not as a stranger but as one invited. The gods do not tower above you. They sit beside you, sharing in the quiet. Their myths are no longer thunderous tales but soft stories told in whispers, meant not to overwhelm but to soothe. Their immortality is no longer intimidating but comforting, like guardians who watch while you dream. And as the night stretches long, the mountain fades. The thrones, the halls, the golden light, all dissolve gently into the mist of sleep. Yet their essence lingers, woven into your breath, into the rhythm of your heart. For Olympus was never only a mountain, it was a story, and stories live wherever they are remembered. So rest now, knowing the gods remain with you, not in thunderbolts or battles, but in the quiet places of the soul. Let Zeus's sky shelter you, Hera's strength hold you, Hestia's hearth warm you. Let Athena's wisdom guide your dreams, Hermes' laughter lighten them, Aphrodite's tenderness soothe them. Let Hephaestus' steady forge lull you, Ares' roar fade far away, and Dionysus' joy carry you into gentle wonder. Sleep takes you softly, like a cloud drifting across Olympus itself. The gods grow quiet, the mountain grows dim, and you, mortal, dreamer, listener, become part of the story. And in that story, there is peace. Our story continues, flowing smoothly as the river of time itself. For you see, the Olympian gods, though mighty and radiant, were more than their myths. They were, in truth, mirrors of the human spirit, larger than life, but carrying the same emotions, the same desires, and yes, even the same vulnerabilities. And so, as you rest here tonight, we will wander gently into their secret hearts, their quieter moments, when the weight of eternity rested upon them like a crown of stars. Let us return to Hera, Queen of Olympus, seated upon her throne of ivory and gold. Many remember her only as stern, jealous, ever watchful of her husband's wanderings. Yet there were times when her voice softened, when her gaze turned tenderly toward mortals. Hera was, after all, the goddess of marriage, of bonds and promises, and in her heart lived a deep longing for harmony. Imagine her one twilight evening, standing at the edge of a meadow where mortal lovers had once met. She could feel the warmth of their devotion echoing in the air, and for a moment, her divine heart softened into a sigh. She whispered blessings into the wind, blessings that drifted down like unseen petals upon those who loved faithfully, who endured together through storm and fire. Hera, though feared, also cradled devotion like a flame she never wished to see extinguished. Now drift with me to Apollo, bright god of the sun, whose golden chariot once blazed across the heavens each dawn. Mortals saw his brilliance, his art, his music, his wisdom. Yet beneath the radiance, Apollo longed for simplicity. Imagine him at dusk, laying down his lyre after weaving melodies that could enchant the very stones. He would sit upon a rock overlooking the Aegean Sea, watching the horizon darken into purple and gold. The sea breeze cooled his face, and for once, he was not a god, but a dreamer. He listened not to praise, but to the natural hymn of waves and cicadas. In such quiet hours, Apollo felt the sweetness of solitude, a reminder that even gods could be nourished by silence. And as you listen, perhaps you too can feel that quiet wrapping around you like a lullaby, softening your mind, soothing your breath. Beside Apollo, in another story carried on the winds of time, walked his twin sister, Artemis. Unlike her brother, she shunned the courts and temples, preferring the vast hush of forests and moonlit valleys. She was wild, untamed, her spirit flowing like a silver river under the stars. Yet Artemis, too, had a secret gentleness. Mortals who were weary, who wandered lost beneath the night sky, sometimes felt her presence. A deer might guide them, or a cool spring would appear in their path, and though they never saw her, they knew they were protected. Artemis moved through the world unseen, like moonlight itself, a quiet guardian. She reminds us that safety can be soft, that protection can come from the gentlest embrace of the night. As you breathe deeply, let Artemis's moonlight cradle you, calm and protective, surrounding your heart. Now let us wander to the forge of Hephaestus, the god of fire and craft. His hands were scarred, his gait unsteady, yet his spirit burned with endless creativity. In the heart of his glowing workshop, sparks flew like fireflies, and from the molten iron, beauty was born. Mortals often pitied him, mocked his limp, but they did not see the strength in his patience, the brilliance in his resilience. Hephaestus was proof that even in imperfection there is divine artistry. Imagine his workshop now. The warmth of the forge, the hum of creation, the glow that pulses like a heartbeat. He worked not only with fire, but with love, shaping gifts for the gods, arms for heroes, treasures that gleamed with eternity. As the forge glows in your imagination, feel its warmth spreading into your body, loosening your muscles, relaxing your chest, reminding you that your own imperfections hold a beauty no one else can claim. Deeper still, we drift to Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger. Many remember his laughter, his clever tricks, his winged sandals flashing through the sky. But Hermes also had a softer duty. He was the guide of souls. When mortals breathed their last, Hermes took their hand and led them gently toward the underworld, ensuring they would not be afraid. Picture him walking beside them, speaking softly, his tone light and kind. He carried no judgment, no fear, only the ease of a trusted companion. For Hermes understood the threshold between worlds, and he brought peace where there might have been terror. Tonight, as you breathe slowly, you may feel a similar comfort. The presence of guidance, the assurance that you are not alone on your path, even in dreams. And let us not forget Aphrodite, radiant goddess of love. She is remembered for beauty, desire, passion that could sway gods and mortals alike. Yet beyond her dazzling allure, Aphrodite embodied the softer shades of love. The tender glance, the quiet companionship, the gentle hand held in silence. She cherished not only fiery romance, but also the subtle, enduring warmth of care. Imagine her walking through a blooming garden at dawn, her fingers brushing petals heavy with dew. She smiles not in triumph, but in serenity, for she knows that love is not conquest, but connection. As her presence drifts near, let your own heart open softly, feeling warmth and gratitude for every bond in your life, every moment of connection. And deeper, always deeper, we drift. The gods, though mighty, were not unreachable. They were reflections of the world's many faces: love and anger, wisdom and folly, strength and vulnerability. In their laughter, in their mistakes, in their moments of silence, they revealed what it means to live fully, to feel deeply. And so, as you listen, as you rest, you are invited to see yourself in them. For within you burns a spark of Hera's devotion, Apollo's brilliance, Artemis's protection, Hephaestus's resilience, Hermes' guidance, and Aphrodite's love. Breathe, and let it settle within you, as stars settle into the velvet sky. Drift with me now, deeper into the story of Olympus, deeper into the dreams of gods who were, at heart, not so different from us. We return again to Olympus, where the gods, though radiant and immortal, often revealed sides of themselves hidden from mortal eyes. Their grandeur was undeniable, yet their humanity, their softness, their longings, are what make them truly unforgettable. Consider Poseidon, lord of the seas. Mortals knew him as Stormbringer, his trident-stirring tempest that crushed ships and swallowed coastlines. Yet Poseidon was not always rage and roar. In his solitude beneath the endless waves, he would wander through coral groves and kelp forests, his great hand brushing against dolphins and turtles who swam beside him without fear. Imagine him seated upon a rock throne deep within a cavern of glowing pearls, the water so still that the silence felt eternal. In these moments, Poseidon was a dreamer, listening to the whispers of tides older than Olympus itself. He was a protector, too, to sailors who prayed sincerely. Sometimes a storm would suddenly ease, a current would shift just so, guiding a fragile ship home. Mortals rarely knew why, but the truth was simple. The sea god had listened. His heart, vast as the ocean, could hold both fury and kindness. and both were true. Then there was Demeter, goddess of grain, whose gifts fed all of Greece. She is remembered for her grief when Persephone, her daughter, was carried into the underworld. Yet Demeter's grief reveals her depth, her endless capacity for love. Imagine her in golden fields, walking barefoot among the ripened wheat. She bends to touch the earth, whispering gratitude into the soil for the lives it nourishes. Every stalk of grain, every loaf of bread, was a hymn of devotion from her to humanity. Even in her sorrow, Demeter's love never ceased. And perhaps as you imagine her, you feel her presence now. The nurturing warmth, like the embrace of a mother who promises, you will always be cared for. You will never be forgotten. Ares, god of war, often misunderstood, comes next. His name evoked fear. His shadow was seen on battlefields where cries of men rose into the sky. Yet Ares, too, had another face. When the war drums fell silent, he sometimes lingered among the wounded, kneeling beside them. He knew the cost of violence, even as he embodied it. Picture him setting down his spear in the grass, watching the wind ripple over the land. His fierce eyes soften, for even gods can grow weary of endless strife. He longed secretly for the peace mortals prayed for, though he could not escape his nature. In his quieter hours, he was not rage, but reflection. His lesson was sharp, yet true. Strength without compassion is hollow. As you breathe in now, feel the lesson of Ares, that even in life's battles there is wisdom, and in wisdom there is peace. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, shone not in spectacle, but in stillness. She had no throne among the great halls, no crown of storms or fire. Instead, her place was at the center of every home, every flame that warmed mortal families. Imagine her kneeling by a small fire, the flames glowing gently on her serene face. She is quiet, modest, yet eternal, for without her warmth, even gods would feel the chill of loneliness. Mortals may have forgotten her name over time, but they never forgot her presence. Every crackling fire, every shared meal, was her blessing. She reminds us that divinity can be soft, unseen, yet essential. Like the steady beat of your own heart, like the steady rhythm of your breath. And then, of course, there was Dionysus, god of wine, of ecstasy, of the wild joy that breaks through the walls of sorrow. Mortals saw him as revelry incarnate, the one who brought laughter and intoxication. Yet Dionysus carried sorrow too. Born of struggle, twice born in fire and womb, he knew what it meant to suffer. And so his gifts of wine, music, and dance were not mere indulgence, but healing. Picture him beneath a grapevine, pouring dark red wine into a simple cup. He offers it not to intoxicate, but to soothe the weary soul, to remind mortals of joy when life's burdens grew too heavy. Dionysus, beneath his laughter, was a healer of hearts. As you rest now, let his spirit remind you that joy is a medicine, that laughter and release are as sacred as prayer. And so the pantheon of Olympus comes alive not in thunder and lightning, but in these tender truths, that each god held not only power but vulnerability. They were mirrors of the world, of us. The sea's calm and storm in Poseidon, the earth's nourishment and grief in Demeter, the fire of rage and the ache of reflection in Ares, the warmth of home in Hestia, the healing joy of Dionysus. As you listen, feel these truths settle into you like glowing embers. For you too contain oceans and fields, battles and hearths, sorrows and joys. You too are vast and layered, strong and tender. You are, in your own way, divine. Now rest deeper, my friend. Let the gods walk beside you as gentle companions in dream. Their stories are not to overwhelm you, but to soothe, to remind you that all things, love, grief, laughter, strength, are part of life's great tapestry. And like the gods, you can hold them all, gracefully, eternally. Sleep now and drift further, where Olympus waits in silence, high above the mortal world, its peaks crowned with stars. The night deepens and your body grows heavier, sinking into rest. The story continues like a soft river current carrying you onward, deeper into stillness. Each word is gentle, like warm light flickering on the walls of a quiet chamber. We now turn to Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger. Mortals often pictured him as mischievous, darting between realms with a sly grin, stealing cattle or playing tricks. Yet Hermes' role was far greater than that of a trickster. Imagine him standing at a crossroads, his winged sandals hovering lightly above the earth, his staff, the caduceus, glowing with a soft golden shimmer. Hermes was the bridge between worlds, guiding souls to the underworld, carrying dreams in the night, whispering inspiration into the ears of poets and inventors. Though quick and clever, Hermes' heart was kind. He knew the loneliness of travelers, the fear of mortals embarking on uncertain paths. Sometimes a lost soul would feel a sudden breeze at their back, or hear a faint whisper telling them which way to go. That was Hermes, gentle, unseen, offering direction. He was laughter in moments of despair, lightness when burdens grew heavy. His lesson is clear: the journey may be uncertain, but you are never alone. The universe sends guidance, if only you listen. Next comes Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the wild, the moon itself. She was both fierce and serene, a protector of the young and the free. Picture her moving silently through a silver forest, her bow at her side, her hounds padding softly at her heels. The moonlight rests upon her shoulders like a cloak. To mortals, Artemis was distant, a virgin goddess untouched by marriage or chains. Yet her distance was not coldness, it was independence. She embodied the power of choosing one's own path, of living by one's truth. Artemis was also tender. She would pause to cradle a fawn, or soothe a mother giving birth, for she was guardian of women in labor. Though she roamed wild woods, she was never cruel. In Artemis we see strength that does not crush, freedom that does not abandon compassion. Her presence was a promise: you can be wild, you can be free, and still carry gentleness within. As you rest now, feel her moonlit calm wrap around you, the cool, silvery hush that tells you it is safe to dream. Apollo, her twin, shines next, god of light, music, prophecy, healing. Mortals saw him as perfection, radiant, golden, beautiful beyond words. His lyre's notes carried through valleys and temples, stirring both joy and longing. But Apollo, too, bore contradictions. His love for mortals was fierce, yet often tragic. He gave the gift of prophecy, yet cursed those who doubted it. He healed, yet also struck with plague when angered. Imagine Apollo seated at a temple steps at sunset, the last rays painting his face in hues of fire and gold. In his hands, the lyre shimmers softly, strings touched not for grandeur but for solace. The melody is tender, carrying the ache of someone who longs for what cannot be held. Apollo's brilliance was undeniable, but beneath it was a soul that knew loneliness, the weight of being too perfect, too radiant. His light was a blessing, but also a burden, and so his presence reminds us, even beauty can ache, even perfection can long for rest. Then there is Hephaestus, god of fire and forge. Unlike Apollo's radiant form, Hephaestus was imperfect in appearance, cast down from Olympus as a child because of his lameness. Yet he rose, not through beauty, but through creation. In the depths of his fiery workshops, sparks flew as his hammer struck iron, shaping weapons for gods, jewelry for goddesses, thrones for Olympus itself. But beyond his craft, Hephaestus was gentle, deeply human. He poured his heart into what he made, each creation a reflection of his resilience. Imagine him now, sweat on his brow, a faint smile as he molds glowing bronze into delicate forms of unimaginable beauty. His lesson is quiet but profound. You are not defined by how the world sees you, but by the gifts you bring forth. Flaws do not diminish worth, they deepen it. Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and craft, arrives next. Born fully grown from the head of Zeus, she was brilliance incarnate. Mortals prayed to her not only for victory in war, but for guidance in weaving, farming, philosophy. Picture her in her armor, shield polished, owl perched upon her shoulder. Yet Athena was not rigid. She cherished creativity as much as strategy. She saw wisdom in the loom as surely as in the spear. And though she was fierce, she was also just. Mortals who sought her counsel often felt a sudden clarity, as though a veil had been lifted from their minds. Athena's presence was like cool water over heated thoughts, calming, guiding. Her lesson whispers to you now. Wisdom is not force but balance, not domination but harmony. As you breathe, feel her clarity settling into you, reminding you that answers arrive when the mind grows still. Now, as the gods gather again in our story, notice how their grandeur softens. They are not distant tyrants of myth, but companions walking alongside us. Hermes guides the uncertain. Artemis protects the free. Apollo heals with beauty. Hephaestus teaches resilience. Athena offers wisdom. Each god reflects a piece of the human heart, and in knowing them we know ourselves more deeply. The night grows thicker, the stars stretch across the heavens. Olympus gleams faintly above the clouds, its marble halls glowing with starlight. And as the gods rest there, so too can you. For their stories, though filled with might and thunder, and always in stillness, like your breath now, steady, gentle, carrying you into dream. Sleep, dear dreamer. Let the gods keep watch over you. Their truths, their tenderness, will follow you into the quiet realms of slumber. The night is deeper now, and your body feels even heavier, as though you are wrapped in warm velvet shadows. The story drifts on, softer, like a dream that continues just beyond the veil of sleep. We move now beyond the shining Olympians, into the lesser-known gods, those who stood at the edges of myth yet carried immense power. First comes Hestia, the eldest and gentlest of the Olympian siblings. Mortals rarely told grand tales of her. She did not seek conquest, nor did she wield thunder or spear. Instead, she tended the sacred flame. Imagine her now seated before a hearth, her eyes calm, her hands steady as she nurtures the eternal fire. To mortals, that fire was life itself, warmth, safety, a place to gather and belong. Hestia was quiet, but her presence was profound. Every offering to the gods began with her flame. Every home was blessed by her light. She taught that peace and kindness matter more than spectacle. She whispers still. Greatness is not always loud, nor does it demand to be seen. Sometimes it is the steady glow in the dark, the soft warmth that makes life bearable. As you breathe, imagine Hestia's hearth within your heart, glowing gently, keeping you safe. Then we see Hades, lord of the underworld. To mortals, his name carried fear, shadows, and silence. But Hades was no monster. He did not torment the dead. He ruled them with solemn dignity. His realm was not fire, but quiet, the stillness of deep earth, the inevitability of rest. Picture him now, seated upon a throne of obsidian, a crown of jet upon his brow. His face is calm, his eyes steady, his presence unyielding yet not cruel. Hades was often misunderstood. While Zeus claimed the skies and Poseidon ruled the seas, Hades carried the heaviest duty, to guard the souls of all who had lived. His love for Persephone softened him, a reminder that even in darkness, there is beauty, renewal, and spring. Hades' lesson is quiet, but essential. Do not fear endings, for within them lies transformation. As you drift towards sleep, his realm reminds you that rest itself is not loss, but renewal. Then there is Persephone, queen of the underworld, goddess of spring. Her story has often been told as one of abduction, but beneath it lies complexity, growth, and balance. In the upper world, she was the maiden, gathering flowers. In the underworld, she became a queen, regal and powerful. Picture her standing in a field, blossoms unfurling beneath her touch. Then picture her in Hades' halls, a crown of gold upon her brow, her gaze steady, commanding. Persephone embodies both, the softness of life and the strength found in descent. She teaches that we are not only one thing. We contain multitudes, joy and sorrow, light and dark, innocence and power. As you drift now, imagine Persephone's blossoms opening gently inside your chest, blooming with every breath you take. Now comes Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy and sacred madness. He was the last to join Olympus, born of fire and mystery. Mortals feared and adored him alike, for Dionysus brought both wild revelry and deep liberation. Imagine him beneath ivy-draped arches, laughter spilling like wine, music thrumming in the night. Yet look closer. Behind the mirth lies depth. Dionysus was not chaos for its own sake, but freedom. He shattered chains of convention, reminding mortals that joy itself is holy. His presence was intoxicating, wine that loosened burdens, dance that released sorrow, trance that touched the divine. Yet his lesson was balance. Too much and joy became destruction. Too little and life became gray. He whispered that ecstasy and sorrow walk hand in hand, that liberation comes when we dare to embrace both. As you rest now, imagine his ivy leaves curling softly around you, a reminder that even in stillness, joy flows like a hidden stream. Far at the edges of Olympus stands Hecate, goddess of crossroads, magic, and the unseen. Few dared speak her name aloud, yet mortals lit torches in her honor at the borders of night. Imagine her cloaked in shadows, three-faced, holding torches that pierce the dark. Dogs trail at her feet, the air around her humming with mystery. Hecate was guardian of thresholds, not just between roads, but between worlds. She walked with mortals in dreams, appeared at midnight crossroads, and guided souls into shadowed realms. To her, mystery was not to be feared, but honored. She reminds us that life is filled with unseen currents, and that standing at the crossroads is itself sacred. As you rest now, feel her torches glowing faintly, guiding you deeper into the dream's embrace. And then, gentle Selene, goddess of the moon. Mortals often forgot her, merging her light with Artemis. But Selene was her own, a presence of pure silver radiance. She drove her chariot across the night sky, her white horses trailing glimmers of frost and starlight. Picture her now, her gown flowing like liquid moonlight, her face serene as she watches over sleeping mortals. Selene's love was steady, endless. Night after night she rose, constant in her care. To lovers she was blessing. To the weary she was comfort. She reminds us that no matter how dark the night, there is always a gentle glow to guide us. As you breathe, imagine Selene's soft silver light falling upon your brow, lulling you toward rest, guarding your dreams. Together, these quieter gods and goddesses weave a softer tapestry around the great Olympians. They are less thunder, more whisper, less spectacle, more presence. Yet without them, the story of the gods would be incomplete. They show that divinity is not only in the clash of war or the blaze of sun, but also in the hearth's glow, the stillness of earth, the silver of moonlight, and the mystery of crossroads. And so, as the story carries you further, you rest in their presence. Hestia's warmth, Hades' quiet, Persephone's blossoms, Dionysus's freedom, Hecate's torches, Selene's moonlight, all of them, like guardians around your sleep, ensuring that your rest is deep, your dreams soft, your spirit safe. Those who shaped existence itself. Their stories are less like myths and more like whispers of creation, echoes of a time before time. First comes chaos. Not chaos as mortals think, not turmoil or disorder, but a vast openness, an empty expanse, the yawning space from which all things emerged. Imagine it now, a still, endless void, neither frightening nor cruel, but deep, infinite, patient. From chaos, the first threads of existence began to weave. In this silence, your mind feels lighter, floating, as though resting upon the same vastness that birthed the stars. From chaos came Nyx, the goddess of night. She was not merely the absence of light, but a presence, velvety, infinite, mysterious. Mortals both feared and revered her, for even Zeus, with all his thunderbolts, respected Nyx. Picture her now, a figure robed in starlit shadow, her eyes reflecting galaxies. She drapes the world in quiet, not to harm, but to soothe. Nyx whispers, "In darkness there is safety, there is rest, there is renewal." As you breathe, feel her cloak of night around you, tender, protective. Beside her came Erebus, the embodiment of shadow. He was not evil, but the gentle obscurity that allows light to shine brighter. Erebus is the hush of twilight, the stillness before dawn, the cool shade that gives relief. He moves silently, almost unseen, yet his presence is everywhere. Imagine him now as a soft veil laying across your weary mind, shielding you from thought, from worry, from noise. Then from the deep came Gaia, the earth. She was the first solid ground, the eternal mother. Picture her as a vast figure. Her body mountains, her breath the wind, her heartbeat the thrum of rivers. From Gaia came all life, all forests, all creatures that walk and crawl and fly. Mortals prayed to her with offerings of grain, wine, and honey, for she gave endlessly. She reminds us that we are cradled always, sustained by the earth beneath our feet. As you rest now, imagine her arms enfolding you, steady as stone, gentle as soil. With her came Uranus, the sky, stretching high above. His cloak was the stars, his voice the wind through clouds. When he joined Gaia, the heavens and earth became one, and from their union the first great beings were born. But Uranus, fearful of his children's power, hid them away in Gaia's depths. This pained her, yet she endured, until one day she armed her son Cronus with a sickle of stone. Thus began the age of the Titans. Cronus, the Titan of time, was powerful and cunning. With Gaia's weapon, he struck down his father Uranus, and the sky was separated from the earth. From the blood of Uranus sprang the Furies, spirits of vengeance, and from the sea foam touched by his severed form, Aphrodite would one day arise. But for now, Cronus ruled, his scythe always in hand, his grip always tightening. Cronus devoured his children one by one, fearing they would overthrow him. Imagine him vast and looming, swallowing whole gods so that none might rise against him. Yet one child escaped, Zeus, hidden away by his mother Rhea. In time, Zeus grew, forced his father to disgorge his siblings, and the Olympians rose in power. Thus began the reign of Olympus. But let us not rush too fast. For before the Olympians took the throne, the Titans themselves shaped the world. Oceanus, the endless river encircling the earth. Hyperion, the light of dawn and sun. Theia, mother of radiance. Mnemosyne, goddess of memory, from whom the muses would later be born. Each Titan carried a piece of the world's fabric, weaving light, time, water, thought, and form. Mnemosyne's gift was memory, not merely recollection, but the deep threads that tie past to present. She birthed the muses, who carried song, poetry, history, and inspiration to mortals. Imagine her now as a serene presence, whispering stories into the ears of dreamers. She reminds us that memory itself is divine, that when you remember, you keep the gods alive. And Oceanus, the endless stream, was not like Poseidon, raging and tempestuous. He was calmer, a boundary of waters flowing in eternal circles. Picture his form, vast, winding rivers that embrace the earth, steady and eternal. His presence reminds us that time, like rivers, flows without end, carrying us gently forward. Each primordial, each Titan carried within them an essential truth. They were not merely beings, but forces. Night, shadow, earth, sky, time, memory, ocean. They were the architecture of existence itself, the pillars upon which the Olympians later built their thrones. As you drift further, feel them around you. Nyx draping you in night, Gaia grounding you in earth, Oceanus flowing beneath your breath, Mnemosyne weaving dreams from memory. Their presence is not loud, not demanding, but constant. They remind you that you rest not only beneath Olympus, but upon the foundations of creation itself. So, as you lie here, your body heavy, your thoughts softer, you too become part of that primordial stillness. A fragment of chaos, a child of night, a dream within Earth's embrace. The age of the Titans stretched long across the world, a reign vast and steady, until the children of Cronus grew strong. It was inevitable, for time devours itself, and no crown lasts forever. Zeus, the child hidden on Crete, grew in secret, fed on honey and goat's milk, guarded by nymphs and warriors who clashed their shields to hide his cries. He was cradled in shadows until he was ready. When the hour came, Rhea gave Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth, and he swallowed it whole, believing it to be his son. Zeus lived, silent and watchful, until the moment came to strike. With cunning and with allies, Zeus forced Cronus to disgorge his siblings. One by one they emerged. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. The Olympians, children swallowed by fear, now stood free, ready to claim the cosmos. And thus began the Great War, the Titanomachy. For 10 years the heavens shook with battle. The Titans, tall as mountains, wielded boulders in flame. The Olympians hurled thunder and storm. Imagine it now. Lightning splitting the sky, the earth quaking, rivers boiling, the stars trembling in their places. The Titans fought fiercely. Atlas, broad-shouldered and unyielding, led their charge, his strength boundless. Hyperion blazed with fire, while Oceanus refused the war, retreating to his waters. The balance trembled. But Zeus had allies the Titans did not. From deep within Gaia, he freed the Cyclopes, who forged for him thunderbolts that split the sky. To Poseidon, they gifted the trident, the ocean's spear. To Hades, they gave the helm of darkness, granting invisibility and terror. Armed with these, the Olympians turned the tide. Still, the Titans endured. Cronus swung his sickle with fury, cutting through stone and storm alike. His children, however, pressed harder. Zeus rained thunder. Poseidon struck the seas until waves toppled mountains. Hades crept unseen, sowing fear in their ranks. The war was not merely of weapons, but of will. The will of the old order against the will of the new. And then Gaia whispered again. She called forth her children, the 100-handed ones, Briareus and his kin, beings of unimaginable strength, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. Shackled long ago by Uranus, they now fought for the Olympians. With them, the battle turned final. They hurled rocks vast as islands, their arms striking with relentless force. The Titans faltered. One by one, the Olympians drove them back. Cronus fell. Hyperion dimmed. Cueus, Crius, Iapetus, all were bound. The war ended in thunder and silence, and the Olympians stood victorious. Zeus, now king of gods, decreed judgment. The Titans who fought against him were chained and cast into Tartarus, a pit deeper than even Hades' realm, guarded by the 100-handed ones. Darkness swallowed them, and their cries echoed faintly in the depths of the earth. Yet not all Titans were punished. Oceanus remained free, flowing ever around the world. Mnemosyne endured, birthing the Muses. Themis, goddess of law and order, became an advisor to Zeus, seated at his side. Prometheus and Epimetheus, sons of Iapetus, were spared, for their fates were yet to unfold. And Atlas, proud, defiant Atlas, was given a special doom. As punishment for leading the Titans in battle, he was made to hold the heavens upon his shoulders for all eternity. Imagine him now, vast, unyielding, bent beneath the weight of the sky itself. The stars wheel above him, endless and heavy. His burden never lessens, yet he never falters. He is strength and endurance made flesh. Thus the reign of the Olympians began. Zeus upon his throne of storm, Hera at his side, regal and proud, Poseidon ruling the seas, trident in hand, Hades cloaked in shadow, his kingdom below, Demeter watching the fields, Hestia tending the flame. The world, reshaped by war, now belonged to them. But even in their triumph, the whispers of the old gods lingered. The Titans in Tartarus, their voices like distant thunder. The primordials, ever present, silent and vast. And always the prophecy that one day even Zeus might fall, as his father fell and his grandfather before him. For time devours all crowns, and no throne is eternal. Yet for now the Olympians reigned, their power fresh, their glory bright. Mortals looked to them, prayed to them, feared them. Their stories spread on the wind, carried through song and memory, etched into the bones of the world. And in the stillness of night, if one listened closely, the echoes of the Titan War could still be heard. a reminder that gods themselves are not beyond struggle, and that every age is born from the fall of another. And as you rest now, let that truth sink into your bones, that endings are beginnings, that battles give way to peace, that even the gods are shaped by change. The Titanomachy is over, the Olympians rise, and the world, for a time, is still.
The war was over, and the world seemed quiet again. Yet victory was only the beginning. The Olympians, newly crowned, were not a single harmonious family. They were siblings, powerful and proud, each with a heart full of desire and flaw. Their reign was not just thunder and glory. It was quarrel, love, betrayal, and endless stories whispered across the ages. Zeus, king of heaven, stood at the center of it all. He had won his throne with cunning and storm, but rule is heavier than conquest. He was mighty, yes, but also restless. His heart leapt like lightning, unpredictable, flashing from one love to another. Mortals, nymphs, even goddesses. Few could resist the fire of his gaze, and fewer still escaped it. His reign, from the very beginning, was marked by the endless weaving of passions. Hera, his sister, and his queen entered beside him into Olympus, radiant and severe. She was regal, sharp-eyed, and deeply proud, yet beneath her crown, she carried a wound. The knowledge of Zeus' wandering heart. From the moment she bound herself to him, she also bound herself to fury. Hero stories are not only of majesty, but of jealousy, vengeance, and wrath. She loved Zeus, yes, but that love was a cage of stormy fire. Poseidon claimed his realm with joy. The oceans, vast and untamed. The trident in his hand was more than a weapon. It was the heartbeat of every tide. He strode the waves as if they were marble floors, and the seas bent to his will. Yet Poseidon was not content with only water. Like his brother, he hungered for power and for dominion. He quarreled often with Zeus, testing the edges of his reign. And on land, he built cities, fought for worshippers, and sowed storms when mortals slighted him. The sea was his kingdom, but ambition made his waters restless. Hades, by contrast, was silent. He did not quarrel for the throne of heaven or for the sea. He accepted the underworld, that shadowed realm of souls, as his crown. Two mortals. He was fear, the final silence, the inexorable pull of death. Yet he was not cruel. He was stern, steady, inevitable. His helm of darkness cloaked him, making him unseen, but it also made him lonely. Mortals prayed to Zeus for rain, to Poseidon for calm seas, to Demeter for crops, but none prayed eagerly to Hades. His was the worship of fear, quiet and reluctant. And so, in his shadows, he ruled alone. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, lifted her eyes to the fields. Where her hands touched, crops swayed, golden and alive. She was tender, nurturing, a mother not just of mortals, but of the very earth itself. Yet she too carried within her the deep ache of loss, for her daughter Persephone's tale had yet to be written, and that tale would shape the seasons and the hearts of mortals forever. Hestia, the eldest sister, tended the flame. She chose no throne, claimed no quarrel. Instead, she dwelled at the hearth, quiet and eternal. To her was given the sacred fire that burned in every home, every temple. Mortals prayed to her softly, with bread and wine, whispering thanks for warmth and shelter. Hestia was peace in the midst of their storming family, a flame that burned without greed, a light that never faltered. Together, they formed Olympus, not a place only of majesty, but of constant strife and story. The mountain itself stood high, its peaks hidden in mist, its halls bright with gold and marble. From its heights, gods looked down upon the mortal world, weaving fate, stirring storms, planting seeds of both blessing and curse. Yet though they were gods, they were not free of flaw. Zeus' thunder was mighty, but his passions led to endless quarrels. Hera's love was fierce, but it burned into jealousy. Poseidon's seas gave life, yet drowned ships in vengeance. Hades ruled justly, but coldly, his heart locked away from joy. Even Demeter, who nurtured, could withhold her bounty when her grief grew heavy. Mortals, gazing upward, did not worship perfect beings. They worshipped gods who were like themselves, only greater, fiercer, eternal. And perhaps that is why their stories endure. For the Olympians were not distant stars, cold and flawless. They were thunder and flame, love and rage, laughter and betrayal. They were flawed divinity, woven into the fabric of human longing. And so the reign of the Olympians began not with harmony, but with tension. Already, the seeds of future Thales were sown. The loves of Zeus, the wrath of Hera, the rivalry of Poseidon, the silence of Hades, the grief of Demeter, the quiet fire of Hestia. Each would unfold, one by one, shaping not just Olympus, but the world below. For gods are not still. They are stories that live, breathe, and shift like the wind. And now, as you rest, feel yourself upon Olympus heights. The air is thin and bright, the clouds drifting below, the halls alive with divine voices. Each god has entered their throne, yet none are finished. Their reign has only just begun. The throne of Zeus glittered upon Olympus, yet the weight of power could not still his heart. The king of gods was restless, and his restlessness took the shape of desire. Zeus loved many, too many. And with each union, new stories were born. Stories that carried joy, wrath, and sorrow alike. His passions shaped not only the fate of Olympus, but the destiny of mortals below. The first to feel his wandering heart was not a mortal, but a goddess. Metis, daughter of Oceanus, wise and cunning, captured Zeus' mind. She was clever, her words like streams of silver, her counsel sharper than any blade. When the prophecy whispered that Metis' child might one day surpass the father, Zeus was struck with fear. Desire and dread mingled in him. And so he acted with the cunning of a serpent. He swallowed Metis whole, thinking to silence fate. Yet from within him, her wisdom endured. And when the time came, her child, Athena, burst forth from his head. Not as an infant, but as a warrior goddess, armored, radiant, her eyes burning with intelligence. Thus, Athena became Zeus' daughter, though she sprang from his very mind. She was his pride, and in her brilliance, he saw his own reflection. Yet even in this triumph, here his heart burned. For she, the queen of Olympus, had not been mother to this radiant goddess. Jealousy sharpened within her like a blade hidden in silk. But Zeus' wanderings did not end there. His gaze fell upon mortal women, and when it did, the line between heaven and earth blurred. Leda, queen of Sparta, found herself visited not by a man, but by a swan, white-feathered and gleaming. From that union, Helen was born, the woman whose beauty would one day set fire to Troy. Europa, a maiden of Phoenicia, walked the seashore when Zeus approached her as a bull. Golden, gentle, eyes soft as dawn. She climbed upon his back, trusting only to be carried across the sea to Crete. There, she bore him sons, among them Minos, who would rule and shape kingdoms far below Olympus heights. Io, a priestess, shone with devotion, and Zeus desired her. Yet, when Hera's gaze turned toward them, Zeus, in panic, transformed Io into a cow. Hera, clever and cruel, demanded the gift of this cow, and placed her under guard. Io wandered, tormented, until at last she was freed, but never untouched by sorrow. Hera's wrath grew with every tale. Her love for Zeus was bound to jealousy, and her jealousy to vengeance. Mortals who caught his eye suffered her fury. Their children bore curses and trials. Hercules, son of Zeus and immortal, Alcmene grew strong and mighty, yet every step of his life was shadowed by Hera's hate. She sent serpents to his cradle, madness to his mind, and endless labors to break his spirit. Yet in the end, even Hercules rose above her wrath, becoming immortal, and joining the very gods who once tormented him. Zeus was king, yes, But his throne was not untouchable. Each passion, each betrayal, each child born of love or trickery wove a web of rivalries. His power was thunder, but his weakness was desire. And where Zeus faltered, the other gods found cause to rise. Poseidon watched, his trident restless in his grip. Why should Zeus alone be king? Was he not just as mighty? Just as divine? The sea was vast, more vast than Olympus itself. More than once, Poseidon stirred rebellion, whispering with Hera and Athena to overthrow their brother. Once they even bound Zeus in chains, thinking to strip him of thunder. Yet Thetis, the sea goddess, summoned the 100-handed Briareus, who freed him. Zeus' rage shook Olympus, but his throne remained. Still, the memory of rebellion lingered. Meanwhile, Hades kept his silence. His underworld was far from Olympus, yet even he was drawn into Zeus' affairs. When his own heart stirred for Persephone, Demeter's daughter, it was Zeus who allowed the marriage, yet that choice tore the world apart. Demeter, grieving, let the earth wither, crops wither, and mortals starve. Only a compromise saved them. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades. Thus, the seasons were born, tied forever to divine quarrel. And Hera, though queen, though regal, was never at peace. She struck at Zeus' lovers, at their children, at mortals who had no defense. She raged, and in her rage, she was feared. Yet, even in her fury, she was worshipped. For she was also protector of marriage, of women, of queens. Mortals prayed to her not only for fear of her wrath, but for the blessings of her crown. So it was upon Olympus, not a realm of quiet gods, but of endless fire. Love, jealousy, vengeance, ambition. Each god carried a storm, and each storm spilled over into the mortal world. Kingdoms rose and fell not only by men's swords, but by the quarrels of the divine. And through it all, Zeus thundered. His throne stood firm, but not unshaken. For power, no matter how eternal, is never without shadow. And in that shadow, stories grew. Stories of heroes, of wars, of blessings, and of curses.
Hera, queen of Olympus, carried herself with majesty. Her crown shone, her robes flowed like clouds, and her presence filled the halls of the gods. Yet beneath her regal poise smoldered a fire, jealousy, fierce and unrelenting. For she alone bore the burden of Zeus's betrayals. Each lover a wound, each child a reminder of her humiliation. And though she could not strike Zeus directly, she made the world tremble beneath her vengeance. The story of Hercules burned brightest in her wrath. Born of Alcmene, a mortal woman whose beauty caught Zeus's eye, Hercules was the living proof of her husband's wandering heart. Hera despised him before he even drew breath. On the night of his birth, she slowed the labor, while hastening the birth of another child, Eurystheus, a lesser prince. Thus, Eurystheus became king, while Hercules, though destined for greatness, was forced to serve him. From his first breath, Hera twisted his fate. Yet fate is stubborn. Hercules grew strong, stronger than any mortal. But Hera was not finished. She sent serpents to his cradle, thinking to snuff out his life before it began. The infant Hercules grasped them in his tiny fists, crushing them with a strength that startled even the gods. This victory only fueled Hera's fury. When Hercules reached manhood, she struck at him again. A madness fell upon him, sent by Hera's will, and in his frenzy he did the unthinkable. He slew his wife and children. When his mind returned, the horror shattered him. Seeking purification, he turned to Apollo's oracle. There, it was decreed. Hercules must serve Eurystheus, the very king Hera had placed above him, and complete 12 impossible labors. Each labor, each test, was born of Hera's cunning, yet each became a testament to Hercules' strength. In trying to break him, Hera unwittingly forged the greatest hero of Greece. But Hercules was not the only one to feel her hand. Jason, leader of the Argonauts, carried Hera's favor, but only because she sought vengeance upon Peleus, a king who had dishonored her. Hera guided Jason, aiding him in his quest for the Golden Fleece. Yet even here, her aid was barbed. For Jason's destiny was bound to Medea, whose love and fury would one day destroy him. Hera's gifts were never simple blessings. They carried within them the seeds of sorrow. Even Paris of Troy felt her power. When Eris, goddess of strife, cast the golden apple among the goddesses, Hera demanded it. To the fairest, the apple read. But Paris, mortal prince of Troy, gave it not to her, but to Aphrodite. His choice doomed him, for Hera's vengeance was eternal. When war came to Troy, she stood with the Greeks, bending fate and battlefield alike to see the city burn. For Hera did not forgive, and she never forgot. Mortals feared her, but they prayed to her still. Queens whispered her name in childbirth. Women lit candles to her for protection. Rulers invoked her as patroness of marriage and law. For Hera was not only wrath. She was order, dignity, and the sanctity of vows. In her duality lay her power, both feared and revered, curse and blessing. Yet her marriage was a chain she could not break. Zeus's laughter, his thunder, his endless betrayals, they bound her in cycles of rage. There were times she rose against him. Once with Poseidon and Athena, she conspired to bind Zeus himself. They fastened chains, hoping to end his rule. But Thetis summoned Briareus, the 100-handed giant, and Zeus was freed. His rage fell hardest upon Hera. He hung her from the sky, golden chains at her wrists, anvils at her feet. The other gods trembled at the sight, but none dared to intervene. Hera bore the humiliation, and though Zeus released her at last, her fury only grew deeper, darker, more patient. For even among gods, vengeance is never truly finished. Hera's wrath would ripple through generations, through heroes, through wars. She was the queen, the eternal flame at Zeus's side, and though her crown glittered, it was forged of fire. And mortals, watching the skies, knew this. To earn Hera's favor was to gain protection as mighty as Olympus itself, but to earn her scorn was to be pursued without mercy, across land and sea, even into the grave. So the stories of the gods grew heavier, more tangled. Zeus, ever restless, Hera, ever vengeful. And beneath their quarrels, the fate of mortals shifted like leaves in a storm. For Olympus was no realm of peace, but of endless strife. Each god aflame, each flame setting the world alight. Poseidon, lord of the sea, was thunder beneath the waves, the unyielding pulse of the ocean itself. His trident split waters, raised storms, and shook the earth. Mortals called him Earthshaker, for with a strike he could topple mountains and sink islands. To sailors, he was both protector and executioner. Prayers at sea could mean safe passage, but a single insult could condemn ships to the abyss. Unlike Zeus, who ruled the skies, Poseidon's kingdom stretched endlessly, unfathomable and wild. Yet he bore a hunger for more. Olympus was shared, the heavens belonged to Zeus, and Hades reigned below. Poseidon, though master of seas, never ceased to yearn for dominion on land. And so he quarreled, with gods, with mortals, with fate itself. His rivalry with Athena was one of the most enduring. Both desired patronage of the great city of Cecropia. Standing before its people, Poseidon struck his trident into the earth, and a spring surged forth. But the waters were salty, undrinkable. Then Athena stepped forward, planting her spear in the soil. From it grew the olive tree, roots deep, branches strong, its fruit nourishing. The people chose her gift. Cecropia became Athens, forever bearing her name, and Poseidon's fury thundered across the seas. From then he waged war against the city, flooding its plains, sending storms to torment its ships. Yet the Athenians thrived, and Poseidon's rage only sharpened their devotion to Athena. His temper burned not only against mortals, but kin. When Zeus chained Hera in punishment for her rebellion, Poseidon joined the uprising, binding Zeus with golden cords. For a moment, Olympus trembled, but their coup failed. From then on, Poseidon bore both pride and bitterness. He was Zeus's brother, equal in power, yet forever second in Olympus's eyes. And yet his domain was unmatched in mystery. Beneath the waves stood his palace of coral and pearl, walls glittering like stars beneath the deep. There, sea nymphs sang, and his chariot, drawn by hippocamps, half horse, half fish, carried him across stormy tides. Mortals, glimpsing him upon the sea, spoke of his beard foaming like surf, his eyes the color of deep abyssal waters. To them he was awe incarnate. But Poseidon's passions were as restless as his realm. He loved, he pursued, he took. Amphitrite, his queen, fled from him at first, unwilling to be bound. Only when Delphinus, a gentle sea creature, persuaded her, did she consent. Grateful, Poseidon placed Delphinus in the heavens as a constellation. Yet Amphitrite's acceptance did not tame him. His desires ranged across nymphs and mortals alike, leaving behind children both monstrous and heroic. Among them was Theseus, prince of Athens, whom many claimed as Poseidon's son. Brave, cunning, and destined for greatness, Theseus would one day slay the Minotaur. Though Poseidon's blood flowed in him, it was not always a blessing. Poseidon also fathered Polyphemus, the Cyclops blinded by Odysseus. When Odysseus mocked the giant, Poseidon's fury followed him across the seas, prolonging his journey, battering his ships, dooming his men. To offend Poseidon was to carry a curse heavier than chains. His wrath was not always unjust. When King Laomedon of Troy refused him payment for building the city's mighty walls, Poseidon sent a sea monster to ravage the coast. Only by offering his daughter, Hesione, as sacrifice could the Trojans hope for mercy. It was Hercules who slew the beast, but Poseidon's lesson remained clear. Promises to gods must never be broken. And yet, beneath his storms, there was a strange longing in Poseidon. He sought respect, honor, recognition equal to Zeus. But where Zeus ruled with thunder, Poseidon ruled with waves that never rested. His dominion was eternal motion, tides rising and falling, tempests lashing, quakes shattering the earth. Mortals lived by his moods, fearing his trident more than Zeus's lightning. It was said that when Poseidon walked the shore, horses sprang from the surf. Indeed, he was father of horses, their strength and speed born of his restless spirit. Charioteers and riders prayed to him, hoping to channel the same wild power. Thus, he was not only god of seas, but of steeds, racing like waves upon the earth. Yet Poseidon's pride often sowed ruin. His anger at Odysseus, his spite toward Athens, his feuds with Apollo and Zeus, all carved scars into mortal history. He was not cruel without cause, but neither was he merciful without reason. To him, mortals were as ships upon the tide. Some guided safely to harbor, others wrecked against rocks, their fate depending on his favor. And so, in Poseidon, mortals glimpsed a truth of the gods, that power was never serene. Like the sea, it was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. They worshipped him with sacrifices of bulls cast into the waves, their blood mingling with foam. In return, sometimes Poseidon calmed the waters. Other times, he stirred storms greater than any man could endure. Among the Olympians, Poseidon's voice thundered loudest after Zeus. He was no mere second. He was rival, brother, and force eternal. And though the skies held dominion, the seas whispered always that beneath their waves lay a god who could shake the world to its core. If Zeus ruled the skies and Poseidon the seas, then Hades reigned over silence, the unseen kingdom beneath the earth. Mortals whispered his name only with dread, for to them he was not simply a god, but death itself. Yet this was never the full truth. Hades, eldest of the brothers, drew the shortest lot when the cosmos was divided. Zeus claimed Olympus and the heavens, Poseidon the waves, and Hades was left with the underworld, a realm vast and eternal, yet one no god envied. Shadows, whispers, and the endless procession of mortal souls became his court. He was no tyrant of life, no bringer of sudden death. That was Thanatos, the winged spirit of mortality. Hades' role was to rule where all mortals eventually came, to ensure order in the place no living man could escape. Unlike Zeus, who paraded his power with thunderbolts, Hades preferred quiet dominion. His palace, deep within the earth, was built of onyx and obsidian. walls gleaming with a faint spectral glow. The river Styx wound like a dark artery through his kingdom, its waters binding even gods to their oaths. Across it ferried Charon, the silent boatman, accepting coins placed upon the eyes of the dead. Those without payment wandered, lost and restless, a warning to the living about the duties owed in burial rites. Cerberus, the great hound with 3 heads and a serpent's tail, stood guard at the gates. To mortals he was terror incarnate. But to Hades, Cerberus was loyal companion, a guardian who allowed souls to enter but none to leave. Despite his grim domain, Hades was not cruel. Mortals painted him as merciless because they feared death itself, but he did not hunt men or revel in their pain. Where Zeus was fickle and Poseidon wrathful, Hades was steady, unyielding. He kept order among the dead, ensuring that heroes, cowards, tyrants, and peasants alike faced the justice of eternity. The virtuous found peace in the Elysian fields, bathed in soft light and song. The wicked endured Tartarus, a pit of torment where ancient foes of Olympus, the Titans, Typhon, and others, writhed in chains. Between these extremes lay the Asphodel Meadows, where ordinary souls drifted in quiet anonymity, reflecting the simple lives they once lived. Yet Hades' reputation was shaped most by the tale of Persephone. When he saw her in the meadows, daughter of Demeter, goddess of harvest, his heart, long encased in stone, stirred with desire. With his black chariot, he seized her and carried her to the underworld, making her his queen. To mortals it was abduction, to poets a story of sorrow, to gods a rebalancing of cosmic power. Demeter's grief for her daughter turned fields barren, rivers dry, and mankind starved. Only when Zeus intervened was compromise struck. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades. Thus the seasons were born, spring and summer blooming with Demeter's joy, autumn and winter with her sorrow. To Hades, Persephone was not a captive, but a companion. In her presence, the underworld softened. Where once there was only shadow, blossoms of pomegranate and asphodel appeared. Hades' justice was unwavering. He alone carried a helm of invisibility, gifted by the Cyclopes, which he used sparingly. He wielded no thunder, no wave, no fury, yet all feared him, for his power was inevitable. Even the boldest of heroes trembled when their paths crossed his. Orpheus with his lyre once descended into the underworld to reclaim his bride Eurydice. His song moved even Hades to pity, granting her release, but only if Orpheus let her out without looking back. Orpheus faltered, and she was lost again. It was not cruelty, but law. Those who fail to trust cannot defy death. Few mortals entered his realm alive, and fewer returned. Hercules came to fetch Cerberus. Perseus sought the Gorgon's head. Odysseus wandered the halls to seek prophecy, but each who left bore scars of the shadow. The living were never meant to walk where the dead resided. Unlike his brothers, Hades seldom quarreled for power. He neither lusted for Olympus nor sought the seas. His solitude was his strength. While Zeus schemed and Poseidon raged, Hades endured, immutable as stone. Yet his name alone stirred mortal fear, for every man and woman knew they would meet him in the end. But here lay the paradox. Mortals cursed him, yet depended on him. For without death, there could be no life. Without the turning of souls, the world would stagnate. Farmers prayed to Demeter for harvest, sailors to Poseidon for safe seas. But even the boldest warriors carried a silent prayer to Hades, not for mercy, but for remembrance, that their shades might find Elysium rather than oblivion. To the Olympians, he was both brother and stranger. He rarely left his kingdom, appearing only on grave matters, oaths sworn, disputes over souls, or wars that threatened the cosmic balance. His absence from Olympus fed the mortal belief that he was a god apart, cold and distant. Yet perhaps among all the gods he was the most honest. Zeus broke oaths, Poseidon betrayed pacts, but Hades kept his realm in balance. He did not hide his nature, for it was unchanging, to rule the dead until the end of time. And so, though mortals feared his name, Hades was not evil, but inevitable. He was the stillness after thunder, the silence after waves, the shadow beneath sunlight. In him, mortals glimpsed the truth they dared not face, that every life bends, finally, to the same path, leading not to cruelty, but to order. For in the depths of the earth Hades waited, not as tormentor, but as the final keeper of all souls. If Zeus was the thunder and Poseidon the sea, then Hera was the crown, the queen of Olympus, robed in dignity, yet wreathed in storms of jealousy. To mortals she was often cast as a cruel goddess, striking at women who caught Zeus's wandering eye. Yet to the gods themselves, Hera was something more. The guardian of marriage, the keeper of sacred vows, the unyielding pillar of Olympus itself. She was born of Cronus and Rhea, eldest daughter and sister to the mighty Olympians. When the Titans were cast down, Hera stood beside Zeus as his queen, her golden throne next to his. But if mortals believed she was merely his consort, they misunderstood her. Hera was not simply Zeus's wife, she was his equal in majesty, if not in dominion. Where he wielded lightning, she wielded order, and no god or mortal could ignore her authority when she spoke in the assembly of Olympus. And yet, Hera's story was forever entangled with Zeus's betrayals. Time and again, the Thunderer descended upon mortal maidens or nymphs, cloaking himself in disguise, leaving Hera humiliated. She could not strike her husband, for Zeus was king and defiance would break Olympus itself. Instead, her wrath often fell upon the women and children tangled in his web. Take the tale of Io, the mortal priestess whom Zeus desired. When Hera's suspicion rose, Zeus transformed Io into a white cow to hide his guilt. But Hera, ever perceptive, demanded the cow as a gift and set Argus the 100-eyed giant to guard her. Even when Zeus sent Hermes to slay Argus and free Io, Hera placed Argus' eyes upon the tail of the peacock, her sacred bird, as a symbol of her vigilance. To mortals it seemed cruelty. To Hera it was the only power left to a queen wronged yet bound to her throne. Her jealousy burned fiercest against Heracles, the mighty son of Zeus and a mortal woman. From the moment of his birth, Hera sought to undo him, sending serpents into his cradle, stirring madness in his heart that drove him to slay his own family. And yet, despite her fury, the irony of fate was cruel. Heracles would ascend Olympus after death, and Hera herself, the eternal enemy, would be forced to accept him as son, and even grant him her daughter Hebe in marriage. To Hera, this was perhaps the deepest wound of all, that the very hero she sought to destroy became part of her divine household. But Hera's character was not only jealousy, she was protector as much as punisher. Cities invoked her as guardian of marriage, of childbirth, of sacred order. In Argos, her temples gleamed with white marble, filled with offerings from women who prayed for fidelity and safe passage into motherhood. She was not a goddess of tenderness, but of strength, the reminder that vows were sacred, that betrayal had cost. Among the Olympians, Hera commanded fear. Even Zeus, for all his thunder, did not always escape her schemes. In one tale, when his arrogance grew unbearable, Hera conspired with Poseidon and Athena to bind him. They chained the king of gods while he slept, only for Thetis to summon the 100-handed Briareus to free him. When Zeus awoke, his fury was terrible, but Hera endured it, for she alone among the gods could stand against his tyranny without crumbling. Her cunning was sharp, her patience long. When the Trojan War raged, Hera's will burned as fiercely as any warrior's sword. Paris, prince of Troy, had judged Aphrodite fairer than her in the contest of the golden apple, and Hera never forgot. To her, Troy became a city cursed, its downfall a matter of divine justice. She bent the course of battle, whispering in the ears of kings, aiding the Greeks not for love of mortals, but for vengeance against slight. And when even Zeus forbade interference, Hera seduced him with the girdle of Aphrodite, clouding his mind with passion until he forgot the war entirely. A reminder that even the king of gods could be undone by his queen Ag's resolve. Yet beneath the storms of anger, Hera carried wounds unseen. She had not chosen her fate as Zeus's wife. In some tellings, Zeus wooed her with tenderness. In others, he deceived her, even forcing her hand in marriage. Her dignity, her jealousy, her fury, all were weapons she sharpened in a role where she could not leave, where her throne was both her crown and her prison. To mortals, Hera became the embodiment of the wronged wife, her vengeance feared more than her blessing. Yet this was not her whole truth. She upheld the sanctity of oaths when others broke them. She preserved the dignity of Olympus when Zeus's lust threatened to unravel it. Without her, the throne of Olympus would have been chaos. With her, it was unshakable, even if bitter. Her symbols spoke to her nature, the peacock with its watchful eyes ever vigilant, the cow gentle yet enduring, the diadem heavy with majesty. She was not a goddess of softness, that was Aphrodite. She was not a goddess of wisdom, that was Athena. Hera was power in constancy, the reminder that even gods must answer for broken vows. And so Hera, queen of Olympus, remains one of the most misunderstood of all immortals. To some, she is jealousy incarnate. To others, she is dignity wronged, fighting in the only ways left to her. But to the Olympians, she was more than either. She was the crown that bound Olympus together, fierce and unyielding, the goddess who would not bow even to thunder. Where Hera embodied constancy, Aphrodite embodied desire, but not the gentle romantic vision mortals so often imagined. She was beauty incarnate, yes, but beauty sharpened into power, desire woven into chains, love turned into a battlefield. To speak of Aphrodite is to speak not of softness but of fire veiled in silk. Her birth was a miracle of the sea and the sky. When Cronus struck down Uranus, the blood and seed of the sky god fell into the ocean's foam, and from that union of violence and water rose Aphrodite, radiant and terrible. She stepped upon the shores of Cyprus, crowned with roses, and even the gods bowed before her glow. From the first moment, it was clear. She was not just another goddess. She was a force the cosmos itself could not resist. Zeus, fearing her influence, gave her to Hephaestus, the lame god of fire and forge, hoping that a husband so humble might tame her power. But Aphrodite was not made for chains. Her heart turned instead to Ares, god of war, passion and violence twined together in a dangerous dance. Their love was scandalous, their trysts hidden yet known. And even when Hephaestus ensnared them in his golden net to humiliate them before Olympus, Aphrodite felt no shame. For desire does not bow to law, and love cannot be forged in iron. Yet to think of Aphrodite only as goddess of affairs would be to underestimate her. She was strategist as much as seductress. She understood what mortals craved, what gods longed for, and she wielded it like a blade. A look, a smile, a whisper from her lips could unravel kings, start wars, or mend them. The Trojan War itself was born of her power. When Eris cast the golden apple marked to the fairest, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed it. Zeus, unwilling to decide, left the judgment to Paris, prince of Troy. Each goddess offered him a gift. Hera promised kingdoms, Athena promised wisdom and victory, and Aphrodite, with a smile as soft as dawn, promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose her, and thus won Helen of Sparta, whose abduction became the spark that lit a decade of war. To Hera and Athena, it was betrayal. To Aphrodite, it was proof. Beauty was mightier than thunder or wisdom, yet her gifts were double-edged. Helen's beauty brought ruin to nations, as did countless others Aphrodite blessed. She was not cruel by nature, but indifferent, for to her love and desire were forces of nature, neither moral nor wicked, but inevitable. Those who fell into her web did so willingly, blinded by longing. Still, there was tenderness in her. She aided lovers, protected brides, blessed unions. In the tale of Pygmalion, she answered the sculptor's prayer, breathing life into the ivory woman he adored, granting him a wife from his own devotion. To Anchises, a mortal prince, she came in disguise, lying with him and bearing Aeneas, a hero destined to found Rome itself. From that union, nations rose, proof again that her power shaped history as surely as Zeus's thunderbolts. Her symbol spoke of sweetness, masking power. The dove, gentle and cooing. The myrtle and rose, fragrant yet thorned. The seashell, fragile yet enduring. Artists painted her as soft, radiant, kind. But the poets knew better. They told of kings undone, warriors distracted, queens humiliated, all by the unseen hand of Aphrodite. Even among gods she inspired unease. Athena scorned her, for wisdom found folly in passion. Artemis disdained her, for the virgin huntress had no need of desire. Hera envied her, for love gave Aphrodite a power greater than crowns. And yet, none could deny her. For when Aphrodite entered the hall of Olympus, even Zeus himself could feel her radiance unsettle his thunderous heart. She was beauty that conquered without sword, love that enslaved without chains. To mortals, she could be blessing or curse. To gods, she was reminder that not all battles were fought with fire and bronze. Some were fought in the heart, and those were the hardest to win. Aphrodite's truth, then, was this. She was not a goddess of tenderness, nor of simple romance. She was the embodiment of longing itself, irresistible, inescapable, as dangerous as it was divine. Those who adored her saw her as gift. Those who cursed her saw her as doom. But all, whether god or mortal, learned the same lesson. No one escapes the power of desire. If Aphrodite was the power of love, Ares was the raw force of hate. Where Athena embodied the cool strategy of battle, Ares embodied its frenzy, the roar of war drums, the clash of blades, the smell of iron and blood. He was not wisdom in combat, but chaos, the storm that turned men into beasts and battlefields into graveyards. Born of Zeus and Hera, Ares should have been their pride. Yet even among the Olympians, he was despised. Zeus himself often cursed him, calling him the most hateful of his children. For Ares was not discipline, not order, not justice. He was the shriek of battle, the joy of destruction for its own sake. He thrived on carnage, his laughter echoing where spears pierced flesh. And yet, for all the gods' disdain, mortals could not ignore him. Every king who raised an army prayed to him, for though Athena gave strategy, Ares gave strength, the fury that made men charge into impossible odds. Without him, courage was brittle. With him, it burned uncontrollably. Ares's companions revealed his nature better than any tale. Where he strode, his children Phobos, fear, and Deimos, terror, flew beside him, sowing dread in the hearts of mortals. Eris, goddess of strife, walked with him, whispering in ears, sparking quarrels that became wars. Enyo, the goddess of bloodshed, drenched battlefields in red. Together they were a dreadful host, and where they passed, nations fell. His greatest love was Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. It was a union as scandalous as it was inevitable. For what is war without desire, or desire without conflict? They were opposites and complements, a fusion of violence and passion. From their union came children who embodied both love and strife. Harmonia, goddess of harmony, ironic offspring of such chaos, and also Eros, or in some tellings, Anteros, love itself, sharpened into arrow and flame. But for all his strength, Ares was often humiliated. In the Trojan War, he threw himself into battle on the side of Troy. Yet Diomedes, a mortal hero aided by Athena, struck him down with a spear. The god of war, howling, fled back to Olympus, wounded and weeping to Zeus. Again and again he was bested, not because he lacked power, but because his was a power uncontrolled, blind, reckless. He could not outwit Athena, nor command armies as Hera could, nor inspire loyalty as Zeus did. He could only break, never build. This, perhaps, is why the Greeks disdained him. To them, war was a necessity, but it must be ordered, purposeful, tied to honor. Ares represented the opposite, meaningless slaughter, villages razed, sons lost for no gain. Temples to him were few, his worship begrudging, but in the north, among the Thracians and Scythians, he was revered. To those warrior peoples, his fury was sacred, his chaos their strength. There, sacrifices of dogs and even men were made to him. blood spilled to appease the insatiable god of battle. Yet it would be a mistake to see Ares only as villain, for war itself is not only cruelty, it is also trial. Ares was the crucible where mortals proved themselves, where kingdoms were forged in fire. He represented the side of humanity that cannot be erased, the drive to fight, to conquer, to survive. To deny him would be to deny the world's darker truths. Even the Romans, who saw in Athena's Roman form, Minerva, the brilliance of strategy, found in Ares's reflection, Mars, something nobler. They reshaped him, elevating Mars not only as destroyer but as protector of the state, father of Romulus and Remus, and thus ancestor of Rome itself. Where the Greeks saw a brute, the Romans saw a god essential to empire. Still, the Greek Ares remained what he always was, the shriek of war, hated yet unavoidable, loathed yet prayed to, despised yet obeyed. Even the gods could not banish him, for as long as mortals fought, Ares would rise again from every battlefield, dripping with blood, smiling his dreadful smile. Ares's truth, then, is this: he was not the glory of war, nor its honor, but its cost. He was the reminder that behind every strategy lies slaughter, that beneath every crown lies conquest. The Greeks hated him because they recognized themselves in him, the part of humanity that revels in violence, the part that cannot help but draw the sword. And so he remained, a god unloved but eternal, his shadow cast across every battlefield. For as long as men march, as long as spears are raised, as long as hearts pound with rage, Ares walks beside them. If Ares was the fury of war, Hephaestus was its iron backbone. He was not the storm of battle, but the forge where the storm's weapons were born. God of fire, smiths, and invention, Hephaestus was the craftsman of Olympus, the quiet genius behind the gods' greatest wonders. Yet he was also the most unlikely of immortals. Where the other gods gleamed with beauty and power, Hephaestus was twisted, limping, imperfect. Born to Hera alone, in some tellings out of spite against Zeus, he was cast down from Olympus as an infant because of his deformity. Some say Hera herself hurled him in disgust. Others claim Zeus flung him in rage during a quarrel. Either way, he fell for 9 days and nights, crashing into the sea where Thetis, the sea goddess, took pity on him and raised him in secret. There, in the cool caverns beneath the waves, the outcast god discovered fire and hammer. With bellows and anvil, he forged wonders from bronze and gold. While Olympus scorned him, Hephaestus grew in skill until even the gods could not ignore his work. His return to Olympus was not by humble request, but by cunning. He crafted a golden throne and sent it to Hera as a gift. When she sat upon it, hidden chains bound her fast. None of the gods could free her. Only when Dionysus tricked Hephaestus into returning, drunk and laughing, did he release his mother. But by then, Olympus had learned a bitter truth. They might scorn him, but they needed him. And so Hephaestus took his place among the 12, hammer in hand, smoke rising from his forges. From that day on, he became indispensable. The shining palaces of Olympus, his work, the aegis of Zeus, the unbreakable breastplate that shook the skies with thunder, forged by Hephaestus. The weapons of heroes, the thrones of gods, the very chains that bound Prometheus to the rock, all his craft. He was more than a smith. He was an inventor. Golden automatons marched from his workshop, self-moving servants of bronze and gold. One, the giant Talos, patrolled the island of Crete, circling it thrice each day to repel invaders. Others tended his forge, gleaming with unnatural life. In him lay the first spark of what mortals would one day call technology, the blending of art, fire, and mind into creations that defied nature. And yet, for all his brilliance, his personal life was marked by humiliation. In an ironic twist, the gods arranged his marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. It was no love match, rather a cruel pairing of deformity with perfection. Aphrodite never hid her disdain, and soon her heart belonged to Ares, god of war. Their affair was infamous, whispered in Olympus, until one day Hephaestus caught them in the act. But the smith was no fool. He forged a net so fine it was invisible, yet so strong not even the gods could break it. He cast it over the lovers in their embrace, trapping them, then summoned all of Olympus to witness their shame. The gods roared with laughter, mocking Ares and Aphrodite alike. Yet in the end, it brought little comfort to Hephaestus, for though he had shamed them, he could never win Aphrodite's heart. Still, he endured, for Hephaestus was not a god of glory, but of resilience. Cast out, he returned. Mocked, he created. Scorned, he endured. Where Ares was destruction, Hephaestus was creation. Where Zeus ruled with thunder, Hephaestus ruled with fire and craft. His forge was eternal, its smoke rising as a reminder that even the broken could build wonders. Among mortals, he was loved more than most Olympians. To artisans, smiths, and builders, he was patron and protector. Where temples to Ares were rare, temples to Hephaestus stood proud, his altars blackened with offerings. For the common man, war might be distant, but tools, plows, weapons, and crafts were daily needs, and Hephaestus's hand was in them all. Even in myth, he often sided with the weak. He forged the shield of Achilles, a masterpiece that was not only a weapon, but a vision of the cosmos itself, etched with stars, cities, and fields. In that work lay a glimpse of the divine mind, a recognition that creation, not destruction, was the true mark of immortality. Hephaestus's truth, then, was this: he was proof that power does not lie only in beauty or in thunder or in the sword. Sometimes power lies in patience, in craft, in fire guided by steady hands. The Olympians mocked him, but they could not do without him, and mortals who struggled and built with their own rough hands saw in him something familiar, a god not of unreachable perfection, but of endurance, of toil, of the fire that makes and remakes. And so Hephaestus endured, hammer ringing, forge burning, the outcast who became the indispensable heart of Olympus. If Hephaestus was the quiet strength of craft, Hermes was the restless spark of cunning. The god of travelers, thieves, merchants, tricksters, and messengers, Hermes was perhaps the most versatile of Olympus, a figure who slipped between worlds as easily as a shadow passes through light. He was born in a cave on Mount Cylon, son of Zeus and the nymph Maia. From the very moment of his birth, Hermes proved himself unlike any other. Mere hours after his first breath, he slipped from his mother's arms and wandered out into the world, curiosity burning in his infant eyes. That same night, he committed his first crime, the theft of Apollo's sacred cattle. But theft by Hermes was never ordinary. To hide his trail, the newborn god reversed the hooves of the cattle so that their prints led in the opposite direction. He drove them backward into a cave, then sacrificed 2 to the 12 in a gesture of divine audacity. When Apollo discovered the crime, his fury was boundless. Yet when he dragged the infant Hermes before Zeus, the scene was almost comical. There stood the newborn, still swaddled, feigning innocence with such wit and charm that even Zeus struggled to keep his sternness. Hermes did not escape punishment, but he did something better. He transformed an enemy into a friend. From reeds and sinew, he had crafted the lyre, a new instrument whose music enchanted even the god of song. He offered it to Apollo in exchange for peace, and in return Apollo gave him the caduceus, the staff that would become his eternal symbol. Thus Hermes, in a single day of life, had stolen, invented, bargained, and earned his place among the immortals. From that moment onward, Hermes was the messenger of the gods, not just because he was swift, but because he could move between boundaries no other could cross. He was the god of liminal spaces, crossroads, thresholds, borders. He walked freely between Olympus, Earth, and even the underworld, guiding the souls of the dead into Hades. To mortals, he was both protector and trickster, the one who might guard a traveler on the road, or rob him blind if the whim struck. His speed was legendary. With winged sandals and cap, Hermes could outrun storms, rivers, even the gaze of death. Where Hera plotted, Zeus thundered, Athena schemed, Hermes moved and things changed. A whisper carried, a secret stolen, a bargain struck. He was the pulse of movement itself. But beneath his mischief lay intelligence. Hermes understood that rules were not unbreakable. They were tools. Boundaries were not walls, but doors. And doors could always be unlocked. This made him invaluable to Zeus, who often relied on Hermes to carry out delicate tasks. When Io was transformed into a cow and guarded by the hundred-eyed Argus, it was Hermes who lulled the monster to sleep with stories and music before slaying him. When Persephone was stolen into the underworld, it was Hermes who descended to negotiate her partial return. When mortal heroes cried for help, it was Hermes who brought them divine aid, slipping between gods and men like a shadowed hand. To thieves and merchants, Hermes was patron, not because he was purely dishonest, but because he understood value, trade, and the art of gain. Where Apollo represented harmony and order, Hermes embodied quickness, cleverness, and adaptability, qualities more often needed in mortal life than lofty ideals. And yet he was not merely a trickster. In myth, he shows a surprising tenderness. To the souls of the dead, Hermes was not cruel but gentle, leading them with care to the halls of Hades. In this role, known as Psychopompos, he became one of the few gods mortals did not fear, for he did not judge the dead nor punish them. He simply guided them across the boundary none could escape. Unlike many gods, Hermes rarely held grudges. Mischief, yes, tricks, endlessly. But he was not consumed by rage like Ares, or jealousy like Hera, or arrogance like Zeus. He laughed, he schemed, he invented, he moved on. Where others sought dominion, Hermes sought freedom. It was said no lock could bar him, no prison hold him, no oath bind him. He was the embodiment of resourcefulness, the very spirit mortals would later call ingenuity. If Hephaestus was the fire that forged, Hermes was the quicksilver that flowed, changing shape, finding cracks, slipping through. And perhaps that is why mortals loved him. For most did not live like gods, with palaces and thrones. They lived by wits, by bargains, by chance. In Hermes, they saw a divine mirror, not unreachable perfection, but the art of survival. His truth, then, was that life itself is a crossing, from birth to death, from here to there, from what we are to what we might become. Hermes walked those crossings, guiding, tricking, laughing, reminding both gods and men that nothing stays still, and everything can be moved. If Hermes was the restless spark, Artemis was the still flame of wilderness. Twin sister of Apollo, daughter of Zeus and Leto, she embodied the purity of untamed nature, a goddess who roamed the forests, mountains, and silver glades, untouched by the corruption of men. Where Apollo radiated the brilliance of the sun, Artemis glowed with the quiet light of the moon, guiding travelers, guarding maidens, and stalking through the shadows with bow and arrow in hand. From birth, her path was unusual. When her mother Leto struggled in labor, hounded by Hera's jealousy, Artemis was the first twin to emerge. But instead of simply being born, she became a midwife, helping deliver her brother Apollo into the world. From that moment, she was tied to both birth and independence, a paradox that shaped her divine essence. She vowed to remain forever virgin, devoted not to marriage or childbearing, but to freedom, purity, and the wild hunt. To mortals, Artemis was both protector and destroyer. She watched over young girls, women in childbirth, and all innocent creatures. Yet she was also swift in vengeance. Those who violated her sacred spaces met swift and often terrifying punishment. The tale of Actaeon tells it clearly. A mortal hunter stumbled upon Artemis as she bathed with her nymphs. For daring to gaze upon her naked form, she transformed him into a stag. And his own hounds, unknowing, tore him apart. This duality was the truth of Artemis. She was mercy to those in need, but implacable to those who crossed her boundaries. She did not forgive easily, nor bend her principles. Her wilderness was sacred, and those who disturbed it paid the price. Her nymphs followed her, maidens devoted to freedom, laughter, and the chase. Together, They roamed woodlands with bows singing, deer bounding through the glades, the night air filled with the sound of silver-tipped arrows. To many mortals, they seemed untouchable, figures of beauty that no man could claim. For Artemis, this was not cruelty, but a choice, the refusal to be bound by patriarchal chains that even goddesses often endured. Yet Artemis was not without tenderness. Animals, especially the young and fragile, were under her care. She punished hunters who slaughtered too many, who killed for cruelty rather than survival. To farmers, she was both ally and threat. Bless her, and the herds thrived. Anger her, and the fields lay barren. The balance of wilderness was hers to guard. Mortals often prayed to Artemis during childbirth, a strange irony given her vow of virginity. Yet she had been there at the very moment of her brother's birth, and so women believed she could ease the pain of labor. Sometimes she showed mercy, sometimes she brought swift death, for Artemis governed not just birth but the fragile line between life and death in those moments. Unlike many Olympians, Artemis sought no throne, no kingdom, no dominion over cities. Her temples were often deep in forests or upon mountain slopes, where wild animals moved freely. To worship her was to honor nature's balance, the silence of moonlit nights, the cry of wolves in the distance, but even she was not immune to wrath. The story of Niobe illustrates it well. Niobe, a mortal queen, mocked Leto for having only 2 children, boasting of her own many sons and daughters. Enraged, Artemis and Apollo descended and slaughtered nearly all of Niobe's children with their arrows. This act revealed a darker truth, that Artemis's purity did not make her gentle. Her justice was sharp, her loyalty fierce, and her temper deadly when provoked. To the Greeks, Artemis represented both fear and safety. Fear because she could strike without warning, safety because she defended those who honored her. She was the moonlight that guides through the forest, and the shadow in which predators lurk. She was the whisper of the bowstring, the sudden silence before the kill. In her, mortals saw the eternal truth that nature is neither tame nor cruel. It simply is. It nurtures, it destroys, it renews. Artemis embodied that primal balance. She reminded men that they could build walls, cities, empires, but beyond those walls, the wilderness still ruled, untamed and eternal. Her truth was independence, purity, and the eternal wild. While other gods sought to shape the world for their desires, Artemis preserved it as it was, unyielding. She was the eternal huntress, the silver bow drawn against arrogance, the moon shining cold and constant in the night sky. If Artemis was the cool breath of night, Apollo was the blazing fire of day. Born moments after his sister, he emerged as the embodiment of light, truth, and artistry. To the Greeks, he was the most radiant of all gods, golden-haired, eternally youthful, a figure of beauty and harmony. Yet beneath this perfection lay contradictions, for Apollo's brilliance often burned too hot, blinding those who drew too close. From the very beginning, Apollo's life was marked by both power and danger. When he was barely grown, he confronted the monstrous Python, a great serpent that guarded the oracle at Delphi. With his bow, he struck the creature down, claiming the site for himself. From then on, Delphi became the center of his worship, a place where mortals journeyed from all corners of the Greek world to hear the whispers of prophecy. The priestess, the Pythia, sat over fumes rising from the earth, her riddling words believed to carry Apollo's voice. Apollo was more than a prophet, though. He was the god of music, poetry, healing, and even plague. With his lyre, gifted to him by Hermes, he could enchant gods and mortals alike. Songs flowed from him as naturally as sunlight spills across the morning sky. In every note he carried order, beauty, and balance, the harmony of the universe expressed through sound. To worship Apollo was to seek clarity, truth, and refinement. But perfection is heavy to bear, and Apollo's brilliance came with shadows. His love stories almost always ended in tragedy. When he loved the nymph Daphne, he pursued her with relentless desire. Desperate to escape him, she prayed to her father, a river god, who transformed her into a laurel tree. Apollo, grief-stricken, crowned himself with her leaves, vowing that the laurel would forever be his sacred symbol. It was a cruel truth. Even the god of beauty and light could not grasp what he desired. Again and again, love slipped from him. Coronis betrayed him, and though he loved her, he could not forgive. Cassandra, the Trojan princess, rejected his advances. In retaliation, he cursed her gift of prophecy so that none would ever believe her truths. Even Hyacinthus, his beloved youth, was struck down by a cruel twist of fate, killed by a discus in a tragic accident. From Hyacinthus's blood, Apollo caused the flower hyacinth to bloom, a symbol of beauty born from grief. These stories revealed Apollo's dual nature. He was both healer and bringer of plague, lover and destroyer, bringer of truth and wielder of curses. His arrows, like Artemis's, could protect or kill. In times of war, Greeks prayed to him to strike down their enemies with sickness. Yet in times of peace, they turned to him for purification and cures. As the god of prophecy, Apollo was also a god of order, but order when too rigid can suffocate. His vision of truth left little room for chaos or imperfection. Mortals admired him, but they also feared him. To stand in his light was to be seen fully, without illusion, without shadow. Many could not bear it, and yet Apollo's worship spread wider than most. From Delphi to Delos, from Athens to the far reaches of Asia Minor, his temples rose. He was the model of civilization, the promise of reason, law, and artistry. He embodied the Greek ideal, balance between body and mind, strength and intellect, music and discipline. Still, he was not invincible. Apollo's pride often brought him low. When he challenged the satyr Marsyas to a musical contest, the satyr dared to play the flute against his lyre. When Marsyas lost, Apollo flayed him alive, his cruelty staining the very earth. The river where it happened was said to weep with Marsyas's blood, a reminder of Apollo's terrifying capacity for vengeance when challenged. Even with his faults, Apollo remained a central figure of the Olympian order. He was the sun to Artemis's moon, the law to Dionysus's madness, the clarity to Hermes's trickery. The Greeks saw in him both the inspiration of their highest ideals and the warning of what happens when perfection becomes tyranny. For the truth of Apollo is this: light can heal, but it can also burn. Harmony can uplift, but it can also silence. Prophecy can guide, but it can also destroy. Apollo-Is's gift was brilliance, and his curse was that brilliance consumed not only those who loved him, but often himself. In him, mortals saw their own striving for beauty, truth, and greatness, and the dangers of flying too close to the sun. If Apollo was the golden face of perfection, Hephaestus was its hidden shadow, the god who bore imperfection, yet created wonders beyond imagining. Born to Hera alone, without the seed of Zeus, he came into the world twisted and lame. His mother, ashamed of his form, cast him from Olympus, letting him fall through the endless sky until he landed in the sea. There, nymphs raised him, and from his exile began his craft. For Hephaestus was not like the other gods, beautiful, radiant, eternal. He was scarred, limping, misshapen. Yet what the gods mocked, mortals revered, for his hands could shape the raw bones of the earth into tools, weapons, and marvels. From fire and anvil, he coaxed out beauty greater than Apollo's songs or Aphrodite's allure. His forge, hidden in the volcanic heart of mountains, became the womb of divine invention. The Greeks told that it was Hephaestus who forged the armor of Achilles, so perfect that mortal eyes could barely comprehend its brilliance. It was Hephaestus who shaped Pandora, the first woman from clay, giving form to Zeus's plan to punish mankind. He built palaces of bronze for the gods, chariots that rode the winds, and jewelry so fine it could dazzle even the immortals. In his hands, metal sang, fire danced, and the world itself was reshaped. Yet, for all his genius, Hephaestus lived in bitterness. His deformity left him outcast among gods who prized beauty above all. Even his marriage to Aphrodite, goddess of love, brought no joy. For though he won her hand through guile, she mocked him with her affairs, most famously with Ares, the war god. When Hephaestus discovered their betrayal, He crafted a net so fine it was invisible, yet so strong it could not be broken. He trapped them in the act, calling the other gods to witness. They laughed, not at Ares and Aphrodite, but at the awkward smith who sought revenge. The laughter stung deeper than betrayal. Hephaestus was brilliant, necessary, yet never truly admired by his kin. Unlike Apollo or Athena, his greatness did not lie in perfection but in persistence. He was the reminder that power is not always beautiful, and beauty is not always powerful. Mortals, however, often saw him differently. To craftsmen and laborers, Hephaestus was their patron, a god who understood toil, imperfection, and creation through struggle. Unlike the shining gods who lived effortlessly in Olympus, Hephaestus worked. He sweated, limped, endured mockery, and yet from his pain he forged wonders that even the perfect gods could not. There is a strange wisdom in Hephaestus. For the Greeks, he was proof that imperfection is not weakness, but another form of strength. His lameness made him no less divine. Indeed, it made him more relatable, more human, than Apollo's untouchable radiance or Zeus's thunder. Where other gods stood above mortals, Hephaestus seemed to stand with them, his hammer ringing in rhythm with their own labor. And there is something else. Fire, his element, is a paradox. It destroys, but it also creates. It devours forests, yet hardens clay into pottery, tempers bronze into weapons, softens iron into plows. In Hephaestus's hands, fire became not just destruction, but transformation. Through him, the Greeks glimpsed the idea that suffering could give birth to beauty, and imperfection could shape greatness. Even in the myths where he is humiliated, Hephaestus endures. Cast from Olympus, he returns. Betrayed, he crafts again. Laughed at, he shapes wonders the others cannot. His story is not one of triumph over weakness, but of strength within weakness. In truth, the gods needed Hephaestus far more than they admitted. Without him, their palaces would crumble, their weapons would dull, their ornaments would fade. Hephaestus was the quiet engine of Olympus, the unacknowledged heart of divine splendor. And so, though the gods laughed, mortals looked at him differently. They saw in Hephaestus something rare, a god not untouched by flaw, but made mighty because of it. A god who limped, who was mocked, who suffered, and yet who forged the very glory of Olympus with every strike of his hammer. Perhaps that is why Hephaestus has endured in memory more than some of the brighter, more flawless gods. For while perfection dazzles and fades, it is imperfection, endured, transformed, and shaped into strength, that truly lasts. If Athena was the wisdom of war, then Ares was its madness. He was the roar of blood in the ears, the pounding of hooves, the crash of shield upon shield, and the scream of men cut down in frenzy. To the Greeks, Ares was the embodiment of war's chaos, brutal, destructive, and terrifying. Yet unlike Athena, who was revered, Ares was not truly loved. Even among the gods, he was despised. Zeus himself called him hateful. For while war was sometimes necessary, Ares was not its noble face. He was its slaughter, its cruelty, its meaningless carnage. When Ares entered the battlefield, he was never alone. He was accompanied by Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror, his twin sons, who raced ahead of him to fill the hearts of men with panic. Beside him rode Enyo, the goddess of strife, whose delight was the spilling of blood. Where they passed, fields blackened, bodies fell, and the ground drank deep of war's madness. Mortals prayed to Athena for victory, to Zeus for justice, but to Ares they prayed only for survival. For he was not a god who chose sides with wisdom. He chose sides for fury. One day he fought with the Trojans, the next with the Greeks, his loyalty as wild and shifting as battle itself. And yet, for all his brutality, Ares was not invincible. Time and again he was bested, wounded, humiliated. In Homer's Iliad, Athena struck him down with a single stone. Diomedes, a mortal hero, pierced him with a spear, and the war god fled screaming to Olympus, like a child crying to his father. Zeus looked upon him with contempt, scolding him as a disgrace. What kind of god of war, after all, cannot endure the pain he delights in inflicting? This was Ares' paradox. He was mighty, but never respected. He inspired fear, but rarely admiration. He was the storm of violence, but storms do not build, they only destroy. Still, there was something uncomfortably honest about Ares. Where Athena clothed war in strategy, order, and honor, Ares stripped it bare. He was war's true face, raw, bloody, senseless. Perhaps that is why the Greeks distrusted him. They could pray to Athena and pretend war was noble, but to worship Ares was to admit war was nothing but slaughter. Yet not all cultures saw him this way. To the Romans, Ares became Mars, a god of not just war but also fatherhood, discipline, and the founding of Rome itself. Mars was revered, almost second only to Jupiter, for Romans embraced war as their destiny. Where the Greeks shunned Ares, the Romans crowned him. In love, too, Ares was both dangerous and vulnerable. His most famous affair was with Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Theirs was a union of passion and contradiction, love and war entwined. Where she softened, he burned. Where she healed, he destroyed. Together, they symbolized the irresistible pull between desire and violence. From them were born children like Harmonia, goddess of harmony, and the war twins Phobos and Deimos, proof that even from chaos, both peace and terror could be born. But for all his fury, Ares was strangely human in his flaws. He was easily angered, easily wounded, quick to boast, quick to flee. Unlike Athena, who stood serene in her wisdom, Ares was raw emotion, love, rage, jealousy, pain. He was not the perfect warrior, but the raging heart of a soldier in the thick of battle. That, perhaps, is why the Greeks feared him. For in Ares, they saw not the glory of their armies, but the truth of war's madness that consumed men. They wanted to believe in Athena's vision of noble strategy. But Ares was the blood that soaked the soil, the broken bodies left behind, the cries of widows and orphans. And yet, can a world without Ares exist? The Greeks knew it could not. Just as storms are part of the sea, Ares was part of life. He was the reminder that beneath every plan, every strategy, every noble reason for war, there is always blood. And in that blood, his shadow always waits. Ares was not loved, but he was feared. And in the world of gods and men, sometimes fear is worship enough. If Ares was war's madness, Dionysus was madness of another kind, sweeter, wilder, and far more dangerous. He was the god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation, and unlike many of the Olympians who embodied control, order, or violence, Dionysus embodied release. To understand Dionysus, imagine the moment when wine first warms the blood, when laughter becomes unrestrained, when the music quickens and the body moves on its own. He was that. But also the moment when intoxication tips into frenzy, when joy dissolves into delirium, when the line between man and beast, god and mortal, collapses. He was born twice, a rare fate even among gods. His mother was Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes, and his father was none other than Zeus. Hera, jealous as always, whispered suspicion into Semele's ear, urging her to ask Zeus to reveal himself in his full divine form. Blinded by love, Semele asked, and when Zeus complied, his thunderous glory burned her to ash. But before the child within her perished, Zeus snatched him away and sewed him into his thigh. From there Dionysus was born again, bursting forth fully divine. The only god to have a mortal mother, yet ascend Olympus nonetheless. This dual birth marked his essence. Dionysus was always both, mortal and divine, joy and terror, order and chaos. Unlike the proud Olympians who often stayed aloof, Dionysus wandered among mortals. He traveled from Greece to far-off lands, teaching men the art of winemaking, leading frenzied festivals where inhibitions were cast aside, and turning villages into places of wild revelry. His followers, called Maenads or Bacchantes, were women who abandoned their homes to dance in the forests crowned with ivy, wielding thyrsus staffs, their hair wild, their eyes gleaming with ecstasy. But his was not a harmless joy. When welcomed, Dionysus brought celebration, laughter, and fertility. When resisted, he brought madness, ruin, and death. Kings who denied him found their people driven into frenzy, their cities undone by chaos. Pentheus of Thebes mocked him, refusing to honor the womanly god. In revenge, Dionysus lured him into disguising himself as a woman to spy on the Maenads. In their divine frenzy, they mistook Pentheus for a beast and tore him limb from limb, his own mother among the murderers. Such was Dionysus's justice, intoxicating, merciless, and strange. The Greeks feared and revered him in equal measure. He represented the truth that beneath reason and order, humans are creatures of instinct, longing, and passion. Athena might symbolize the mind, but Dionysus symbolized the heart unleashed. His festivals, the Dionysia, were wild, ecstatic celebrations, yet also the birthplace of Greek theater. Comedy and tragedy alike grew from his worship, for in Dionysus's realm, all masks were worn, and all masks eventually fell. Unlike most gods, Dionysus blurred boundaries. He was often depicted as effeminate, his beauty soft, his presence ambiguous, sometimes bearded, sometimes smooth. To his followers, this was not weakness but freedom. Dionysus was liberation from rules, from roles, from the prison of identity itself. He was the reminder that the soul cannot be contained, that joy and terror flow from the same source. Even in love, Dionysus was unusual. Unlike Zeus with his countless betrayals, or Apollo with his tragic obsessions, Dionysus found deep devotion in Ariadne, the abandoned princess of Crete. Theseus had deserted her on the island of Naxos after she helped him escape the Minotaur's labyrinth. Alone and heartbroken, Ariadne was discovered by Dionysus, who lifted her into his world of revelry. He loved her fiercely, faithfully, and even crowned her with a constellation so that her beauty would never fade. For the god of chaos, he was oddly constant in love. Yet Dionysus's power was not just over wine or ecstasy, it was transformation itself. He could turn pirates into dolphins, drive entire armies into delirium, or soften the hearts of kings. His arrival was often heralded not by thunder, but by ivy creeping over stone, by vines bursting with fruit in barren places, by the sound of drums and flutes swelling in the distance. Wherever he went, he brought change, intoxicating, terrifying, unstoppable. In the end, Dionysus was perhaps the most human of gods. He was not the storm of Zeus, nor the reason of Athena, nor the brutality of Ares. He was joy and grief, love and madness, creation and destruction intertwined. He revealed that within every person lies a wildness waiting to be freed, a truth both beautiful and dangerous. To honor Dionysus was to admit that life is not lived in order alone. It is lived in passion, in surrender, in the moments when we are most alive and most vulnerable. He was a god who broke the boundaries of Olympus, who walked with mortals, who lived not above them but within them. And perhaps that is why he endured. Because as long as there is wine, song, laughter, and sorrow, Dionysus is never far away. If Dionysus embodied wild release, Hermes embodied cleverness. The sly smile, the quick word, the hand that moves faster than the eye. He was the messenger of the gods, yes, but that title hardly captured the fullness of his nature. Hermes was a trickster, a guide, a thief, a patron of travelers and merchants, and a god of boundaries, and of crossing them. From the very moment of his birth, Hermes showed what he was made of. Born in a cave on Mount Selene, son of Zeus and the nymph Maia, he was no ordinary infant. By the time the sun had set on his first day of life, he had invented the lyre by stringing tortoise shell with gut, stolen 50 of Apollo's sacred cattle, cleverly disguised their tracks by making them walk backward, and returned to his cradle, looking the picture of innocence. When Apollo confronted him, Hermes feigned shock, indignation, and wide-eyed innocence so well that even the gods laughed. Zeus, rather than punishing him, admired his cleverness. In the end, Hermes returned the cattle and gifted Apollo the lyre, cementing a strange friendship between the god of cunning and the god of harmony. This was Hermes' essence: quick, resourceful, untamable. Unlike the rigid Olympians who demanded respect and feared insult, Hermes thrived on the unexpected. He was as much at home in the markets of men as in the halls of Olympus. He was the god of trade, of bargains, of wit, and yes, of thieves. For Hermes, theft was not shame but art, so long as it was done with brilliance. But Hermes was also a guide, a psychopomp, one of the few gods who could travel freely between worlds. He moved with ease between Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. When mortals died, it was Hermes who guided their souls to Hades, ensuring they crossed safely into the shadowed realm. In this role, he was not cruel nor grim. Rather, he was a comfort, a swift hand leading mortals into the mystery beyond life. Mortals prayed to Hermes before journeys, for he was the protector of travelers. His symbols, the caduceus staff, winged sandals, and wide-brimmed traveler's hat, all marked him as the god of motion. Roads, crossroads, and boundaries of all kinds were sacred to him, for Hermes ruled not over permanence, but over the places where things change. The Greeks understood that Hermes was present in every act of crossing, between nations, between states of mind, between life and death, between truth and lies. He was the god of in-betweens, of thresholds, of liminality. To him belonged the sudden thought, the flash of inspiration, the clever word that saves you in a moment of danger. His wit often outmatched even the greatest gods. Once, Hera was furious that Zeus had fathered yet another child, this time with the mortal Alcmene. The result was Heracles, whom Hera despised. When she tried to prevent his birth, Hermes tricked her attendants, ensuring that Heracles entered the world safely. Later, Hermes became Heracles' helper, guiding him in his labors, showing again how the clever and the strong could be unlikely allies. Hermes also served as a protector of oaths and commerce. Merchants invoked him to bless their dealings, though one could argue that his blessing was often two-edged, for Hermes also blessed trickery and deceit. To worship Hermes was to admit that trade, diplomacy, and even friendship often walk hand in hand with cunning. Unlike Zeus, who ruled with thunder, or Ares, who reveled in blood, Hermes ruled with words, speed, and wit. He was never the strongest, but often the smartest in the room. To trick a god was a dangerous thing. Yet Hermes did it often and survived, even thrived, because his trickery was rarely malicious. It was playful, challenging, a reminder that intelligence is as divine as strength. And yet Hermes was not without tenderness. As psychopomp, he was the last companion of every mortal. He walked beside kings and beggars alike as they left their lives behind, leading them with a gentle hand. There is something profoundly human in that role. Hermes, the trickster, also the comforter, the one who laughed at the living but respected the dead. Mortals loved Hermes because he felt close, approachable. He was not lofty like Apollo or fearsome like Poseidon. He was the god who might share a joke with a shepherd on the road, who might help a clever thief escape, who might whisper an idea into the ear of a poet. He was the god of ingenuity, of survival, of adaptability, the very traits that mortals most needed. To honor Hermes was to honor the truth that life is uncertain, full of crossings and changes. Sometimes strength is not enough, nor wisdom, nor even love. Sometimes what saves us is quickness, cleverness, and the courage to laugh even in danger. In this way, Hermes embodied not just the messenger between gods, but the messenger within humans, the voice that whispers solutions when all seems lost, the sudden spark of invention, the reminder that boundaries are not walls, but doors.